be flooding and things like that post-fire. I mean, it's certainly part of the risk that I think we're tasked with. Are we able to bring that spreadsheet up?
Yes, I just opened it up, Ellie, and dropped it in the chat. So folks, I dropped the spreadsheet that I was just referencing in the chat for those online. And then in just a second, I'm also gonna drop the report that we're talking about, that the recommendations are being pulled and adapted from. One thing I think, if we could pause just for a minute, because I like to always think of like, where are we going? What's the destination? Have you all thought about what the sort of output of this exercise is going to be? Oh my God, sorry, I lost myself in my, where's the Zoom? That's okay, I'm dropping the report that we're talking about in the chat, folks. So I was thinking about, is the goal for task E maybe some sort of like simple report that says, here's the tasks that we, suggest or recommend, the recommendations that we recommend be implemented here in Colorado, here's what they might look like here in Colorado, or here's kind of what they're thinking. Have you thought about what the like deliverable might look like?
I haven't. I mean, I think, the task was to prioritize and recommend. And I'm assuming when we recommend, we should probably also recommend a couple of potential solutions, whether it's legislative or policy or
Great.
Or whatever.
So I like to think about this, but y'all can tell me, let's come back to it. But I like to think about the output so that as we're going through things, we are kind of recording thoughts in a way that is easily transferable into whatever the output is, unless you think it's just gonna be something like a public testimony where you verbally share, or do you think we need some sort of like physical kind of report on the final recommendations from this report?
Seems like we ought to have a document.
Some sort of document, great.
Or not.
Do you think it's fine if I erase that?
Some
Yeah,
people,
it's just a
there's
spreadsheet.
nothing on there that is really needed, so.
Great, so I think maybe, as I said, we could have two like things that are already in progress and then places where there's a gap that you're sort of suggesting one of these recommendations could help fill. Do we think that's at least two parts of a report that make sense, at least at this stage?
I think I would it's important to get something documented, right?
Yeah.
I do certainly caution against, like, we referenced this huge report from
Yeah.
the federal commission, 340 pages.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great content in there, but that's not for us,
No.
right?
I think like, if it could be definitely within 10, but I think like a short and sweet, like maybe 1-page executive summary with recommendations listed and then like up to 5 pages. I mean, unless you guys pick 50, which I don't think was the goal, I think I heard like top 10 might be nice.
For sure.
But I'm always like, as a facilitator, if you were to walk away with, not that I'm talking smack on anyone, but if you were to walk away with 140 recommendations, I would feel like I didn't do a good job. Okay, so I just wanted to get that in my head because as we, we'll have the recording,
Right.
we have like some
Right.
exercises we'll do.
Right.
Hi, yes, thank you. Can you make that loud?
Yes.
Sorry, we're turning you up.
Okay.
There we go.
What are the other working groups creating? Because I mean, I never envisioned that this particular working group of the entire task force would be publishing its own documents. I figured anything we created would be part of the task force's final document.
Yeah, absolutely. In my mind, we haven't talked about this for every single of the 15 EO tasks. And this is something that we're working towards within working groups to identify what does completing a task from the executive order look like? Because the nature of the tasks are so different from each other, I think whatever the output looks like could look slightly different. The reason that I was sort of thinking this one might be some sort of document is A, because we're sorting through 140 to narrow it down. And then B, part of it is looking at like how would it be implementable here. And so it's not like we can just take one of the recommendations that are framed federally and like perfectly slot it in. So really the report in my mind.
Let me rephrase my question.
Yeah.
I'm not arguing that we would create any kind of document. What my question was is whatever our output is, how does that fit in with the task force's output, which is the combination of all the working groups, right? Like we're not publishing, the fire and risk management working group recommends, it's the task force recommends.
Yeah,
right?
so my initial vision, and this is all open for discussion, was that once there is something that the other task force members can review, that this document or the list of recommendations that are pulled from Task E would go to the task force for review, and then in one of our either virtual or in-person meetings, we would basically put them up for a vote and put them up for any sort of input on how to frame it to make it implementable here in Colorado. And then the other thing is that I could see some of these needing to be some sort of like formal legislative or policy recommendations, but some of them may not be. And so I think there would also be a difference because we are working towards legislative recommendations across the whole task force. The ones from this that might need to be like a legislative recommendation might be put in sort of its own bucket with any of the other formal legislative recommendations that the task force might do. But yes, to your point, Mark, like we're just thinking about kind of what actually comes out of Task E. And so I think this is open for discussion. What makes sense to all of you in terms of like bringing the recommendations you sort through to the full task force?
Yeah, Mark, I think my vision would be that we would provide a document back to the main body of the task force with our recommendations. So not necessarily the public facing, I mean, obviously it's a public document, but the audience should be the rest of the task force.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome.
I think, can I just jump in real quick? Sorry. No, I think that makes sense from my end too. I think and maybe Mark, I had a similar question. And so maybe where we're getting tripped up is like the report framing of it. I think
just document
makes it seem like it's more of a formal document than like a one pager or like summary document or something like that.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Seems a little more like an internal document.
Yes. Yeah, internal, and then after approval from the task force, I think we work together and with the co-chairs to decide what does it look like once things are formal task force recommendations. From there, what does it look like to go, quote unquote public. But at this stage, agreed, so like a summary document for internal review of the task force, I think is what we want to work towards today, right? Does that sound good?
Yeah, we can almost produce a one-pager for each of those EO tasks. I don't think we'll get them all.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think the only caveat I will give is that before because I'm here on behalf of my boss, I'll just have to run anything by him. And so I probably won't be able to give like final sign off on something today. So just as like a caveat to everything.
Yeah, I mean, we have 3 hours, a little less now, and so I think the goal, right, is make as much progress as we can. But yay, maybe we'll get it all done today. But even so, I would think basically from here, we'll take the transcripts, any notes. I did make worksheets if we wanted to do those, otherwise we can use whiteboards. And then collectively, this working group with my support can like online start drafting what the like summary document looks like. And so there will be time for more within the work group internal review before bringing it to the task force, absolutely. And then everybody within the working group would get the chance to give a final go ahead before we root it out. And Allison,
Perfect.
do you
Thank
have
you.
any thoughts on if that sounds like the right kind of process to you?
Yeah, that's sounding a lot. That is sounding right to me. I don't think any work group should make any final products like we're talking about.
Yes.
We should just keep things, and that way people can keep moving on, more detail, like more conversation, right? More development together in the room, and then we can bring all of that to the main task force, and then put that in a consolidated document when we do our reporting at the end of the year.
Perfect. Awesome. Any other thoughts on kind of the direction we're heading today?
Just a comment, Ray, that,
Yeah.
at least in my mind, to sort through some of this is to think about it in terms, and I won't say terms of priority, but I will say terms of timeline. So that, I mean, if the task of the task force is to get us out of this, for the long haul, I think we have immediate needs, I think we have short-term needs. So immediate would be, say, the next 6 months. Short-term would be the next 12 months, and then medium in the next 5 years, and then maybe long is 10 or more.
Great.
And so if we think about priorities or how we should sort those things out,
Great.
because it's, at least in my mind, it's easy to say we can do this today, this today,
Absolutely.
this today. But is that getting us to the primary task of,
Yeah.
and that's a long, that's a 50-year strategy, that's not a 15-minute strategy.
Absolutely. Okay, so a couple of notes, and maybe we can just fill this out a little bit more before we start assessing. But it sounds like a couple of things I heard in terms of like as you're reviewing them, the like evaluation assessment you're doing, kind of bringing it back to the central mountain pine beetle issue in some regards, right? And I heard just two things, but I was kind of only listening in the background, but that it sounds like a focus might be considering fire response mitigation. Were there other sort of like focus topics that you might want to hold in your mind as you're evaluating the recommendations?
I think community resiliency has to be a part of that. I mean, it depends on your definition of mitigation, which is a super broad
Yes.
definition. But most people look at mitigation and go, what are we gonna do about fuels? And it's like, it's not gonna fix it for us. We have to do more, community resiliency, home
Great.
hardening, or those types of things. Codes and standards have to come into play in this conversation.
Great.
And maybe just real quick, because it's a soapbox and mine,
Yeah.
we're probably part of it. The definition of mitigation is lessening the likelihood or severity of an event when it occurs, not fuels treatments.
Yeah.
Fuels treatments are a tool for mitigation, but not the sole source for mitigation. And I just stress that because, and I know others in the room, that when you go to the Capitol, when you go downtown or you go to DC, all they understand is what are we doing about trees?
Yes.
And that's, and here's my other soapbox, because it'll come up more, is that when we get into those conversations, we have to find ways to measure our success in ways that are not related to dollars. And I throw that out, and I know you're getting all kinds of praise for your helicopter, but I'm getting beat up. But I got sent these questions from a reporter the other day that were like, asking questions about how many fires, how many hours, how many gallons, that type of thing. And then the next question was, how much have you spent on mitigation?
Yeah.
It's like, so if I told you I spent $25 million on mitigation,
Yeah.
you would have went, wow. But if I tell you we
If you
did $1 million or
It's
a
not
million
it's
gallons
not
of
legislatively in your purview.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so, yes,
Allison
Oh,
has her hand raised.
thank you, Allison.
Yeah, thanks all. Can you hear me? My
Yes.
internet's pretty bad. Yeah, Mike, you bring up such a good point, and I'm looking at this list. Thank you so much for putting together this spreadsheet, with a more consolidated list from the report. But Mike, with the emphasis that, is already in other groups on mitigation or forest management or forest health treatments, I'm wondering how we can consolidate this list down even more to the priorities that you're bringing up right now. I'm thinking about our statewide WUI code and all the things that are going on that really need to be highlighted from this group, Mike. So how can we highlight the few of these that are in here and really level those up as priorities from this group, while also maybe acknowledging that many other of these pertain to, a mountain pine beetle outbreak. But that way to elevate it from this federal level or this federal report level, but then really also just highlight everything you're doing already in our state.
So it sounds like, yeah, to prioritize the bigger list, be considering this holistic approach that encompasses community resiliency, mitigation in terms of several different pathways for mitigation that lead to community resiliency, and then of course fire response within the guise of mountain pine beetle across timelines.
We have two more hands raised.
Yes, I didn't see who was first, but on the top here, Mark.
Yeah, thanks. So I just want to add a bit to what Mike said. And Mike, I do agree exactly with what you said there. But on top of that, it's mitigation is more than fuels. And in this particular case, as we're already seeing just from this year's fires, it's mitigating what comes after the fire or after the standing dead trees start falling down. Even if you don't have a fire there, when we think about the impacts of the pine beetle, it's not just stuff burning, but it's also stuff washing downhill under the right precipitation conditions. So when we talk about community resilience, I don't think and one of these recommendations does talk about post-fire resilience. That's really what we're talking about in my mind is the post-fire flooding and debris that are going to follow gravity.
Thank you. I don't know if you,
Sarah was-
I'm noting it.
I think Sarah's next.
Hey, all. I hope I don't ruin the momentum, but I am going to introduce myself first. Yeah, that's okay. I was like, I don't have to introduce myself. I'm like, I'll do it. I'm Sarah Shaughnessy. I'm with the U.S. Forest Service. I'm the Regional Fuels Program Manager. So I am filling in for Todd Neal, who is off. He is Troy Heithiker's, our Regional Forester's official designee. But all of this conversation is very exciting because I guess I had, the benefit and some of, it was a little negative not having the context and looking over this documents. And this is kind of where I was going with it is, I see a lot of objectives and recommendations to meet those objectives. So when I looked at it last night, I just identified similar objectives to what you guys are all talking about, looked at the recommendations that fit within those and then started sequencing them. Like, what do we need to do first? How can we implement these recommendations in a strategic way? So yeah, looked at increased pace and scale of mitigation, not just fuels treatments, but risk mitigation. Improve outcomes when fire occurs. I looked at the evacuation recommendations. For us, when we are looking at where we're going to do mitigation work by policy, we have to focus on people and property and safety. When we are actively, suppression of wildfire, our main objective is the safety of our firefighters and people. So I did look at that and then, just looked at, how do we recover faster? How do we have that resiliency after, post-fire outcomes? And then just building durable systems. So those are like the four objectives that in my hour of looking at this that I came up with, and it seems like it's in alignment with where this group is going. So I was worried I was going to be totally in left field without the context, but those were my initial thoughts and just kind of sequencing like the actual recommendations, where they fit in and how it makes sense to implement those. And a lot of them, I'm like, they're already like being done. They've already been done. They've already been implemented. And a lot of them are like at a place where, we're in a good place. And some of the stuff at first I was like, well, the outbreak is happening now. Like these long-term ones, I'm like, ugh, does it make sense? Like, but yeah, like that's the stuff that takes time that we need to start now. So anyway, my initial thoughts,
Thank you.
thanks all for allowing me to be part of this. Figured I'd introduce myself before I started on a rambling message.
Thank you. Let's do Abby, and then should we do a quick break for brief introductions, since we do have a couple folks that are our designees and nominees? Does everyone else know each other? Okay, great. Abby, and then we'll do a quick round of introductions.
Sounds good. I just had a question as I was going through these that I wanted to pose. And because we are tasked with reviewing the commission's report, I think we're the only working group that has that task. But there's also a watersheds working group. And so as I was going through, I was thinking, and I guess for discussion, like wanted to see, should we be focusing, like, should we be incorporating the post-fire pieces and the watershed pieces as well? Should that be something the watershed working group is working on? Like, kind of what is the scope of what we want our review to look like? Is it for the entire task force? Is it just for our working group? I guess because I was thinking the same thing, and I also was identifying some of the post-fire and watershed ones in addition to the mitigation and the workforce pieces. But I guess I just wanted to kind of clarify some of that or pose that to the group if we, how we feel about those distinctions in the other working groups as well.
Thank you. Does anybody have like a gut reaction that they want to respond with?
I've been in a couple of those watershed, or at least one watershed group meeting, and there has been discussion there related to post-fire recovery on that, and then just kind of like when we talk about the holistic management, those are some of the conversations coming up there too.
Great.
My 2 cents is that if we try to deal with the 148 recommendations, this group will never get done.
Yeah.
So I think, in my opinion is, we take the recommendations related to fire and risk and not get, because if we get into forest health in this group, I mean, to me, it's like, okay, what's the fire role in forest health?
Yeah.
We need to talk about fuels crews, we need to talk about air curtain burners, we need to talk about workforce, we need to talk about, how do we mobilize resources, how do we fund it, how do we build a system that, much like a response system, when you need a dozen engines to help with a prescribed fire, this is where you go to get that.
Yeah.
But if we get into what does it mean for, then we're gonna get stalled up forever.
Agree completely.
Yeah, I'll say, Abby, thank you so much for bringing that up. Y'all can't see it, but I have a parking lot sheet over there to capture these kinds of ideas. My gut reaction is similar in that that's a really good recommendation and thought to bring up for those working groups. And I'll put it on the parking lot so that we can return to that question later with those working groups once they view what the fire risk and management working group synthesizes down to, given the progress on their other tasks. If they also want to do a similar approach to assess things relevant to their working group, I can have that dialogue with them, and I've put it on our parking lot for me to remember and bring up. Mark?
Great, thank you. Sorry. Sorry, Mark. No, I think that sounds good. I think, and totally understand like about the scope. I was just thinking about it as we're the only ones currently reviewing the report. And so there is a whole lot of good stuff in there outside of kind of what we're currently talking about. So just wanted to bring that up. So I think that totally makes sense to bring it to the other groups. Thank you.
Mark?
Yeah, I had put a comment in the chat about the overlap really between, post-fire recovery and mitigating what comes after a fire. But I did that before Mike's comment about us focusing on fire management, fire mitigation, which I completely agree with. And so I would say if we're going to hand this off to the watershed group, that we just try and make sure they're capturing that overlap, because some people come to us and they want to talk about fire recovery, and some people come to us and they want to talk about post-fire flooding mitigation, and they don't often realize those are the same thing in many ways, outside of rebuilding structures, right? Structures. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, let's do a brief round of introductions, and then unless there are other kind of comments or questions, I think we can dig in. So for those I haven't met yet, I'll start, and apologies for not starting us off with this. I went to the wrong location this morning and was a little bit frazzled. But my name is Marae Gonzalez, but I go by Ray, and I am co-facilitating this process with John Sanderson from the Center for Collaborative Conservation at CSU. And maybe I'll take us this way and then online.
Okay, Brad White, I'm the fire chief up at Grand Fire, but I'm here representing Colorado State Fire Police.
Good morning all, I'm Joel Humphreys, I'm with BLM, I'm Alan Bittner's designee, he's at a horse gatherer today.
Good morning, Mike Morgan, I'm the director of the Colorado Division of Fire Prevention and Control and one of the 3 co-chairs of the task force.
Mike Alexander, I'm the Director of Emergency Management for Douglas County and representing emergency managers' interests.
Thanks. And I'm gonna just go in my list. So first is Mark.
Yeah, hi, I'm Mark Thompson. I'm the State Hazard Mitigation Officer at the Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. And I am ex officio.
And then Sarah, you introduced yourself. So Abby.
Yeah, Abby Callahan, Senior Legislative Assistant for Congressman Joe Neguse in his DC office on the policy side.
Thanks. And Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie Studer. I'm the West Slope Regional Director for Congressman Neguse's office in our district office here in Colorado. I'm based in Frisco, but I also cover natural resources for our district team.
Thank you. And Allison.
Hi everyone, Allison Lurch. I'm the Assistant Director for Forest Health and Wildfire Mitigation for the Department of Natural Resources. I'm also the staff support for this task force along with State Forest Service and DFPC. But today I'm here representing Director Dan Gibbs with the DNR, who is also a co-chair with Mike Morgan and Matt McCombs.
Thank you. And then in the corner here is Ellie. Yeah.
Ellie, I run the online stuff.
Ellie is one of our assistants on this project with the Center for Collaborative Conservation, and the only reason we can do anything hybrid, virtual, remote. Awesome. Well, do we feel ready to pull up that spreadsheet and start walking through it?
This is the right spreadsheet.
Yep, cool. Yes, just while you were talking, Ray, I took the liberty of kind of highlighting some of the lines that had more responses than others.
Excellent.
But we also didn't really get everybody weighing in, so I don't know if there's people didn't weigh in, have some comments they want to get out there, or if we just want to kind of run through the highlighted ones.
Yeah, I think let's run through the highlighted ones. I'm both gonna kind of track along on my laptop but then take notes on this bigger poster. And then we can decide after these highlighted ones, maybe we use these as some alignment to kind of figure out the best way to sort through them, and then we can tackle the rest. Does that sound good to everyone? Excellent. So the condensed recommendation on line 6 is invest in fuels reduction treatments, which feels relatively broad. Do you also want me, I can find the associated recommendations in the report. Would we also want to read them in full?
Oh, certainly could. I mean, that's recommendation 17.
Sorry, this is making me look dizzy. Oh, that's also just what it says. Okay.
Yeah, I thought I tried to get them. I mean, each one has a paragraph that's 6 pages explaining them, right? And it seems in line with what we've been discussing this morning already.
Based on what I heard this morning, I think some of the Alan's input, based on what you kind of see the guardrails you put in, I think I'm rethinking what are some of our some of our rankings here.
Mm-hmm. And how so?
One of them was more focused on biomass,
Mm.
which I think is extremely important, but I don't know if this is the group to be talking about biomass.
I think it depends on the angle, right? This group talks about, fire risk directly related to mountain pine beetle, right? So what does the mountain pine beetle do? It kills trees, that creates more dead fuel, that create a risk, and change the risk profile for firefighters, both near and long term. So how do we mitigate that risk? How do we reduce that risk of fire and to firefighters directly related from increased dead trees from mountain pine beetle? And to me, that's removing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Methods of removing that fuel where it makes sense, related to private property and near private property.
Which sort of leads into the second recommendation there, which is invest in wood processing facilities and wood utilization sector.
Right.
So having been through this in Green County, we had, so early on, everybody was spraying their trees, thousands of dollars spraying their trees, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, right? And then there became a point where the fire departments are like, guess what, it's time to give up. And furthermore, it's time to get rid of the fuel. And people were reluctant to take that, sell it as a timber sale and get it out of there. And at that point in time, there was some mills around. And then a few short years later, and there was a lot trucked out of the county, but a few short years later, we were down in mill capacity and everything was being trucked to Montrose and the value went way down. And furthermore, we had a few years where it just actually cost more to remove the wood off site to log it than it was just to leave it or put it back to whatever, right? And I think we're maybe a little better than that today, but I struggle with this one all the time when I talk with my forestry friends because, Colorado State Forest Service is an advocate for putting that biomass to good use somewhere, and the market's just not there, right? But, it's my belief, and I don't always hold that. It's my belief that the world's changed around us a little bit, right? And there's a lot of composites and engineered materials now that are filling those needs. So regardless of what we invest in wood processing, what's the real need? What can that really be used for these days? Especially when we're talking about increasing the amount of board feet of lumber dramatically in Colorado.
Yeah.
So, where do we invest, right, to make the most use of it? It doesn't feel like your average lumber mill's gonna help that much.
Yeah.
I mean, if the demand were there would be more mills already.
Right. To me, it's more about driving down the cost of treatment, the cost of removal with no expected return.
Right. Yeah, and I know, there's a couple of counties doing biochar and biomass and things like that, which is great, but I don't understand what the total usage could be, right? Where's kind of our top limit, and do we invest in that and make that a 3% difference, or make a 30% difference? I don't know.
Well, I think, even Matt Combs has said that we don't grow trees in Colorado, we grow water. And the trees are a part of that process, but the reality of big logging in Colorado is there won't be big volume in Colorado, right?
It's just a cost.
It's,
We have, I think it was, I saw Mike then. I need glasses, y'all. Is that Sarah? Mike and Sarah. Please go.
Sarah, it's you.
Sarah was first.
Sorry.
Hey, that's okay. So I had a couple thoughts. With the condensed recommendation number 4, is there another group who is working on updating, hazard and risk data sets and assessments and the modeling to see, we know where the values are. Do we know what the risk looks like now that we have the change in conditions from the mountain pine beetle? And and I apologize. It's probably all in this. Like I looked through this quickly, but I didn't really see if someone was working on that. To me, looking at where we're going to go with fields treatments is like the initial start and seeing where those priorities are and if they've changed from prior risk data sets and modeling. And then what we've been talking about is what do we do with it when we remove it? That's the crux of all of the treatments that we've done is, we can modify the fuels. How do we remove it? And how do we not cause other issues with other insects and ips, beetles and stuff with the slash? Obviously removing like the crowns and the standing trees reduces like the probability of having an active crown fire. But if we leave the stuff on the ground, we still have that increased risk of passive fire, the more surface fuels. I concur with that conversation. And, that was part of when I looked at the objective of like increasing pace and scale of fuels treatments, like the end is like, what do we do with it? Where do we go? What's the mechanism? What do we do with the material? How do we do the work? How do we fund it? And how do we know that what we're doing is actually reducing it, the monitoring post treatment? So sorry, and I apologize. I'm trying to work on not rambling and throwing a bunch of stuff out. So I had to off to you for being able to capture all that.
Yeah, Ray, can I acknowledge? Can I try and answer something? So Sarah, you bring up a good point. I don't know if a lot of the state risk data that we follow is through the Colorado State Forest Service and their Forest Action Plan and their Wildfire Risk Data website. And I actually don't know if anyone in the state is doing some of this projection modeling. So I think that's a really good point and just something that we can ask and bring back to them. What we have so far is we have the projection modeling of the outbreak itself. So that's some of the mapping. I believe you've seen that. And I think we did that in conjunction with U.S. Forest Service of the spread over years or potential spread. So thanks for bringing that up.
And then we had Mark.
Yeah, I actually initially raised my hand to ask Sarah a question. I'll get to that, but I want to respond to that particular question. I personally didn't rank number 4 among my top 10 because of the way that data sets are used, to my knowledge. Right, so the State Forest Service does the statewide WUI mapping. We have the statewide WUI code based on the State Forest Service's mapping, but no state agency really does fuels management across the state. But the Forest Service, with its annual program, they try and prioritize according to the Forest Action Plan, but that's not rigidly followed. The programs that we fund are in response to local needs based on fire or whatever hazard it is. I know CoSwamp is focused primarily in the 10 strategic areas, but and Mike, if I'm misspeaking on behalf of DFPC, let me know, but to my knowledge, there's no state agency that is saying this is our top priority fuels project in the entire state of Colorado based on this data set, so we're going to go address it. Right? Everything is kind of set up to help locals address their localized risk. So I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just saying, to me, it wasn't a top 10 out of the list of recommendations. My initial question, going back to the wood utilization, there's a place I go every fall in October or November that looks drastically different because the U.S. Forest Service has been clear cutting it, basically. And it seems like y'all are just burning it. And that's an area that used to get, was lumber production area. I mean, has the U.S. Forest Service given up on timber production in Colorado? Because if so, that tells me that we probably shouldn't be too far behind, to Brad's point about, what would people even use this wood for?
That's a question that, I will defer to our regional forester and I can pass on to him, but I will say no, we have not given up on it, and that combines both risk reduction with timber production.
I mean, the reason I ask is because, like, in these huge swaths that have been clear cut over the last 5 years, very little of that's getting trucked out. Most of it's getting piled and burned.
Ooh, just folks, you're freezing
We're
for
doing it.
us.
So
It's just the TV.
Oh, is that our internet here?
Ray, those of us online can hear each other. Can you hear us?
It's freezing on our end. Not sure if it's the TV connection or the internet. Are we freezing for you at all?
No, we can hear you
Okay.
clearly.
Can you just
Can you hear us?
Now we can. It's just in and out a little bit.
Whoa.
Oh, sorry. Give us just a moment, please. Apologies. Okay, I think we should be good. We just missed the last bit of the dialogue you were having. If you feel like there's anything in that last kind of comment that I missed in the notes, feel free to plop it in the spreadsheet, and I can organize these later. I'll just put Ray's notes so we know. So, okay, at risk of stalling conversation, so if you want to keep going in this direction, let me know. But I want to propose that basically we do this in 2 rounds. And the first round is not a ton of dialogue, but just going through the condensed line of the recommendation and giving it like a thumbs up, medium meaning need a ton of discussion, maybe, and thumbs down is like just move on. And then we can count the number of people that, vote a different way. And then once we narrow, because let me see, how many are on here? So yeah, there's 53. So why don't we do a more rapid fire, like yes, no, maybe of the initial list. And then once we narrow it down a little bit more, we can go point by point with a little bit more dialogue. And then I have some prompts for what that like deeper dialogue on the more shortlisted items might be. What do you all think of that?
That would be in relation to, with like a thumbs up, thumbs down, in relation to what we want to focus on or priority scale?
Yeah, I guess you let me know, but my thought was like, should we even talk about this right now? Or are we saying we don't even think that this is gonna be relevant anyways?
Does it make the cut or not?
Yeah. Allison.
Ray, I thought we were focusing on the yellow highlighted ones first, though. Is there a reason that they're the yellow highlighted ones? Like, did they come up as the highest priority for this group coming into this meeting? I just wanted a little clarification.
Yeah, they were the ones that had the most votes. So we were gonna look at those first, but then my thought was we're spending so much time digging into these. It might be nice to do like a first pass through to cut some out before we dig into each one. But we can go one by one if folks prefer. Any preference?
I don't know that I have a preference, I think I have a comment,
Okay.
maybe this makes sense or not, but I think one of the things that I think we have to stay focused on is I think we have to use common sense and I think we have to use realistic answers. And I'm gonna throw an example out there that, I mean, we talk about logging. Well, great, but that's a 10, 20-year solution. We're not gonna solve that today because we don't have the capacity. We talk, and I get accused a lot of times of being anti-burn, and I'm not. I wanna be realistic about how we do it, because when you get into the conversations, it's like, well, we need to do more prescribed fire. It's like, okay, I totally agree. That means right time, right place, right conditions, right resources. No, it means having an insurance backstop. To burn down communities, I don't care what your insurance backstop is, we're dead in the water when you burn a house down, we're done. So let's be realistic. We all agree that we need to do more prescribed fire. How do we accomplish that in Colorado versus the textbook?
Yeah.
Well, people aren't doing it because of the risk. Because it's high risk activity, right? So that's my 2 cents. And I think we can get so bogged down in that minutia of stuff, at least in my mind, if we back up and go, all right, the things we know we need to do now, how do we do that realistically, using common sense, that are gonna give us to build the community trust to allow us to do more of it. And by saying we've got an insurance policy with a whopping $250,000 on it that won't replace the fence in the neighborhood, and going, that's our solution. That's not realistic. So, sorry, soapbox.
And so what I'm hearing here is like, let's prioritize the more near-term kind of implementable dialogue, given we have like 2.5 hours now, and then the ones that we definitely want to talk about, but that maybe are these deeper conversations, have more initial dependencies or are longer term, we can note them down and come back to them after today's meeting so that we can at least make some initial progress working through these. Does that sound good? Awesome. And then I don't know this topic obviously as familiarly, so if we start getting bogged down in a conversation, we can have like a hand sign that's like, hey, let's just come back to this. And then I'll put it on a like, we're gonna talk about this after today list, basically. Does that sound good? Okay, let's try out the rapid fire on these and see how it goes.
I can't see.
Yeah, Ellie, I'm gonna need your help with the raised hands because I can't.
Yeah.
I've been really trying not to get glasses, but it is time. Okay, so recommendation number 1, community wildfire risk reduction program for the built environment. I don't really know if that means a lot as stated. I see 1 thumbs down. What else do we have? Anybody big thumbs up?
I am. Community risk reduction is based upon 5 E's, right? But the first one being education, and that people to understand the environment that they live in and what the risk is to them. The second one being enforcement. Well, I'll back up. Say engineering, which be codes and standards of here's how you can, the things you can do from a codes and standard perspective to reduce that risk. 3 is enforcement of you need to build your home to a standard. And 4 would be economic incentives of what are things to encourage people to do that, which could be grants, or it could be, hey, I can actually get insurance now. And then 5th is emergency response. So to me, that's the framework that everything has to be framed in. Even the mountain pine beetle, living in the mountain pine beetle impacted areas has a major role in community risk reduction, because if people don't understand that, they don't know what to do, which is the other 4 E's. That's my 2 cents.
I mean, I agree with that long term. when I look at it in the lens of what can we accomplish the next few years with this pine beetle epidemic, it feels to me like, just need pieces of that, but.
Yeah, and the reason I went thumbs down is, just working with communities across the state. It's not that they don't understand the risk; they're just making other choices.
And I can be talked off the ledge of that because we have an entire group of people here that are assigned to community risk reduction. So maybe it's just have them keep doing what they're doing, and then they can take it. And maybe that's not a problem for the task force.
Well, I don't disagree that a lot of the stuff on the list are gonna kind of fall under that. And maybe we just need to highlight kind of a different color and kind of refer back to it.
You know what, you and me on the spreadsheets, like, you're my kind of spreadsheet, so yeah, I was thinking, why don't we have like. Love a guy who knows a good spreadsheet. So why don't we have a color for mixed votes, but let's come back to it once we get through the list.
And going back to like Mike's point there on that one, like Alan's number 2 is next. And it's something that him and I talked about just yesterday on this. Kind of gets into that kind of we kind of put it into different buckets. This kind of community awareness and being proactive. And like he talked about some programs when he was out in California, he saw related to just even having places where people could dispose of some of their fuels projects. And as you do that, you bring somebody out there to educate somebody. So like you offer this service in a local community. Hey, go remove some of your woody debris around here. Then you have some of those conversations. So having some type of incentive related to that. And you move this like basically, it's called a dumpster around for awareness.
I certainly agree with the importance of community wildfire risk reduction, and what we're talking about, to me, the priorities are life, protecting life, then property. And in that scale, the best way to protect a home is to harden that home and to do all the things we know should be done to that home. Where I struggle is what's government's true role in that.
That's pretty philosophical. Take a beer lunch break.
We would need 2 for that.
Allison.
Yeah. And also, given this is like the first recommendation from the entire process, Mike, I'm looking at you, even though I can only see half your face. I'm thinking about you, Dan, and Madeline, and others from Colorado in the room putting this together. This recommendation to me is like the umbrella recommendation. I look at this and then I look at so many more that are on this list that just fit right underneath them, right? A community wildfire risk reduction program encompasses things like Mike is saying, home hardening, defensible space, evacuation, all of these things, like it could. So I don't want to like have this be not a thing. So let's just make sure that even whether this is decided to stay or not stay, this sort of just to me is fundamental.
And I think what you guys said, it makes sense, right? I mean, that's the framework we're operating in. We may not be spending a lot of time on CRR, but it's all part of the CRR process.
This is kind of a note for myself, but if anybody wants to add to my notes, please do. Okay, so we'll definitely come back to this one. All right, let's do like quick snapshot votes. Incentivize proactive community wildfire planning and risk reduction.
So I didn't rank this one largely because I feel like we've been requiring community wildfire protection plans for 2 decades now. Many communities have them. How many communities are working on them? Hard to say.
How my phone's going on.
Yeah.
I think it's not a dire need for this task force at this moment.
Yeah, I think specific to the mountain pine beetle, again, planning I feel like is sort of behind us.
Yeah.
We got what we got, and now we need to deal with it.
Yeah, and I agree, and Brett, not just the CWPPs, but we've also basically been requiring the hazard mitigation plans, which also addressed fire for 25, 26 years now.
Yeah.
So it's happening to the level communities want to do it.
Sorry, just to help me understand, am I hearing that folks aren't voting for this to be prioritized because it's already happening? Or as Mark, you phrased it, because it's happening to the level the communities here already want it to happen? Is that what I'm understanding?
I mean, to me, we've been incentivizing it for decades. Through planning dollars, through grant dollars that become available because the plans exist, whether that's FEMA or the U.S. Forest Service or the State Forest Service. I just don't know how else we could incentivize it.
I think the planning, all these communities are supposed to have these plans in place, so to incentivize additional planning, I don't know helps. The question is, who's making progress on their plans and why are they or are they not making progress, right? I suspect a lot of it's financial related.
And then also going back to Mike Alexander's point, I mean, what's the state government's role in further incentivizing local governments to do things they've been doing for 25 years?
So to me, this is not a thumbs down no, it's we're already doing it in a capacity that works or is at least in place in Colorado.
So
What
is
color
a
should
better
we make?
phrase to
Yeah.
say the task force doesn't need to take action on it because it's happening.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah.
So it's not that it's not important,
Yes.
it's just that it's already happened.
That's exactly what I was thinking. And so basically, if we're thinking about like the internal review document and then whatever our final like task E checkboxes done product looks like, I think that there's a list of like, here's what's happening. In these federal recommendations, the task force assessed these recommendations and was able to say, excellent, we're doing these already. And then here's the ones that either are partially done or a full gap that we recommend Colorado consider, and here's what it might look like. Brad, what color should it's done be?
I hesitate to call it done, but it's in progress.
In
and it
progress.
probably just needs to be monitored by someone, probably not the task force.
Great. Let's do orange. No, I hate that. I take
I was
it
gonna
back.
suggest green, but
Green, I like that. That green's horrible.
Right.
Yes.
Julie has her hand raised.
Julie, please.
So this in regard to this particular question around is the state already doing everything that we can to incentivize communities, and this is also kind of a philosophical question, is I'd be interested in understanding if the relevant communities are doing as much as they can, and are those incentives sufficient enough for them to take the action that this group believes they all should be taking at this point? And, does at some point at a policy level it come down to more than just incentives, but requirements or some sticks in addition to carrots?
Okay, so what I'm hearing, and thank you for that, is like one thought could be for the ones that we say are like in progress, the task force maybe isn't gonna adopt any like formal something related to this because it's in progress. We could still put a note of, like you were suggesting, maybe somebody who, like, there's somebody that should monitor it, and they could ask questions of local communities. Are you doing this? If so, how is it working? If not, what are your barriers? So there could still be some recommendation related to ones that are in progress, but maybe isn't all of you or the task force like the responsibility of you, but the recommendation would be, this is in progress, X, Y, and Z groups or somebody might kind of assess or evaluate the progress, explore barriers to implementation or maybe further needed incentives. So I jotted that note down, and we can keep mulling it over as we see more of our like in progress ones. We can think about like what role should this working group have in engaging with these in progress ones deeper. Does that feel like a good middle ground here? And I've jotted your note. I think it was Julie. I can't see them. Thank you. Okay. And we're back on 4. Fund, improve, maintain wildfire hazard and risk data sets.
So Mark's got me thinking a little bit, and he's right, there's no one state agency, responsible for this, but maybe that's part of the deal is, we got the risk map over at, the wildfire risk map at State Forest. We've got, the RAP going on at DNR and the watershed group, and maybe somebody needs to be responsible for overlaying all those layers and prioritizing where the limited dollars need to go. Allison knows I've had some complaints on the co-swap concept because it doesn't really include the whole state, and there's not a lot of background information there on how we got there, and how things became priority, and maybe there is some cause to just knowing there's gonna be limited dollars. Which watersheds are the highest risk and need the help, which critical infrastructure needs the most help.
And does that key into my soapbox a little bit earlier about how we measure success too, though?
Right, yeah. I think so.
How so in your mind?
Well, we have this discussion all the time. How do you measure reduced risk, right? And there's not really we have a hard time coming up with a quantifiable, probably the emergency managers have a better way to describe that, but, if there's a particular watershed in the South Platte that is more vulnerable than others because of, grade or fuels that are there or whatever, and we prioritize that for funding, and we can do a mitigation project, thin that out, and reduce that risk, then I think there's measurable outcomes there. How do you describe that measurement? I'm not sure. If doing that 300 acres benefits 3 million people in the city of Denver in the long haul, that seems like that should be a priority over, some small watershed that some HOA uses.
Right.
I think we had Allison.
I think this is really driving. Yeah, Brad, thanks. When you're talking about this is really, I feel like, saddling with the, what is the watershed and Forest Health Group, thinking about the wildfire ready watersheds statewide susceptibility analysis, right? That we now have our entire state mapped for post-wildfire potential post-wildfire impacts and watershed impacts, as well as some of our highest priority watersheds in the state in terms of water and other critical infrastructure. So I'm wondering how this can tie into those efforts and that idea of statewide prioritization with watersheds and water in mind.
Yeah, and watersheds are part of it. There's other critical infrastructure too, right? So to Mark's point, somebody's gonna take the wildfire risk and the watershed risk and the cultural risk and infrastructure risk and overlay it all and
Yeah, I couldn't agree. Brad, you're speaking something that I've been talking about for a bit with some other folks internally here. So yeah, how do we put together all of these? We have some incredible data in our state too. So how can we put it all together?
yeah, and then I don't know what that does as far as priority for this group, but that's great.
Who is next?
Abby.
Great, Abby, thank you.
Great. Yeah, something I was thinking about and why I didn't have it on my list initially when I was looking at this is because I was wondering, and open to thoughts from you all, but if it makes sense to have like one data set at the state level, or if this is more of a federal, we need a
It's definitely not federal.
national. Okay. But that was kind of what I was thinking about is if there, because there's certainly a lot of federal data on this as well and state data. And so if that kind of, if that makes sense, we want a Colorado specific, we put everything together, or if there was a desire for, and I think in the commission report, they were certainly thinking kind of putting together all of those data sets federally. So that was kind of something I was just thinking about. But if we want to keep federal out, Mark, I think that's fine too. But just like wanted to pose that in terms of scope, if we're thinking state level, or if this is more of a federal compilation.
Yeah, so Abby, the next person from Colorado I meet who's happy with all the federal risk data sets will be the first person from Colorado I've met who's happy with the federal risk data sets. Brad, going back to your point, I'm not actually sure we could prioritize across all of the funding sources. Mike Alexander made a great point about it starts with people, right? So my funding sources, people, structures, infrastructure, specifically prohibited from forest health and watershed health, priorities. The EPA 319 grant, which does the non-point source pollution, that's great for watershed protection. You can't use it for people, structures, infrastructure, and that's through CDPHE. And I think the U.S. Forest Service Community Wildfire Defense Grant Program is also focused on people, structures, and infrastructure. So, that was part of why I didn't rank this one, in addition to earlier comments about it already existing. I just don't know that it's even possible to prioritize implementation across the state just based on those programmatic restrictions.
Can I make a comment? And I agree with what you just said, Mark, that's reality, but it's also not common sense. And I think that's part of our challenge if we're really going to make a difference. And again, a lot of the stuff with the federal report was around, if we keep thinking about what our limitations are today, then that is true. And yet we'll sit there and we'll stand up in front of people and we'll say, fire doesn't recognize boundaries.
Yeah.
And so we shouldn't either. We'll wait till you go try to get a grant to do something about it. And it immediately is on boundaries and geographical and all that. And we go, if we're gonna fix it, I support a statewide map. That you go, and here's why, not to get political about it, here's why I support the U.S. Wildland Fire Service, is because it's mission driven. It's not about who owns the dirt underneath where the problem is, it's about fixing the problem. And I think that is the mindset we have to get to. And again, totally agree with what you said, Mark.
Yeah.
In reality, I don't believe in it as the right way to do work or business. And so if we're gonna talk about good neighbor authority, let's talk about good neighbor authority. And let's talk about those maps where those priorities are that get the most return on investment to reduce the risk in a way that we can hopefully not adamantly disagree about, because we're gonna have disagreement there. But I mean, to me, that's the model we have to try to get to.
That was kind of the other bucket that Alan and I kind of talked about, was cross-boundary types of work. And I do think there could be challenging to put a data set together for multiple reasons, but it doesn't necessarily mean we shouldn't try to strive for something. Because I think if we're gonna work across jurisdictional boundaries, we have to have something that can inform those decisions across them, right?
I think it's important, but to me, it's in the long-term bucket, right? Again, it's not about what we need to do in your timeline, 6 months, 12 months. That's the 5-year.
So we're saying medium to long term. Okay.
Getting the data set together is not an easy task.
No.
It's gonna take 5 years to agree.
So, okay, I'm here hearing, just so we can move on, but we'll have time to come back to these. Well, Allison first, and then.
It's very quick. All
Yeah.
that we're saying right now, I agree that this is more of a possibly a medium to longer term. It really, what we're talking about too is shared stewardship, and shared stewardship amongst decision making. And we have MOUs and other things in place with the U.S. Forest Service and the BLM, and to talk about how we work cross boundary and in many different facets of natural resource and other management. So we've got some mechanisms in place, and I think this is something we can explore.
But also good stewardship should include the built environment in that model, so I totally agree.
Excellent. So we're gonna vote this as yes, but longer term, so let's not prioritize it in today's conversation. I'm gonna have to remember all these colors.
A key, a legend.
Ellie, can you make a legend somewhere?
Yeah.
Of all of the colors. And this color blue is yes, but medium to long term, talk about later. And then this color green is in progress, come back to figure out how to report on. Okay. All right. So implement strategic plan for prescribed fire. This feels like it could be a big one, but do we have an initial, should we consider this at all? Yes or no?
I saw that as a subset of the next one, number 17. That's why I didn't rank that one.
I ranked it pretty much for the exact reasons Director Morgan spelled out earlier. I feel like there's some focus on it in the state, but we're trying to fix the wrong thing. And if we really want to get prescribed fire as part of the solution, we need to focus on it a little differently. And I think it's a valuable tool in the short term. I don't think we have the capacity in the short term.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, Brett. I love prescribed burns. Happy to set one whenever Mike asks. But yeah, that's just my thought process.
Sorry. One thing that came up earlier, but just to kind of capture this specifically, I think I was hearing that basically for this to be feasible, there's some initial dependencies that need to be in place for it to be like fully viable, with insurance being one of them. Did I understand that?
Yeah, I think, I think this builds in, maybe what I was trying to get across really is, what do we need to do for, everybody agrees prescribed fire is a good thing. What do we do short, medium, long term about, and long term is probably a strategic plan. But short term is having the appropriate workforce, resources, all those things. And the insurance backstop can be a part of that, but it can't be the low hanging fruit of that, because we know when you get it wrong, we're all done.
Well, and that's kind of where I go, we got a capacity problem, right?
Yeah.
And easy enough to say we're gonna train more, burn bosses, but try to get a local, whether it's county or local firefighter into RXP2 class. Well, there's 85-90% of the slots reserved for federal players that won't burn on private ground, right? So how do we get past those restrictions? I mean, insurance is one thing, right? I think most of us in the local government space can tackle the insurance problem just fine, but to the extent of right resources, it's hard to build that capacity in a short amount of time.
I think one of the resources we need is overcoming risk aversion. We have a lot of reasons why we can't do it, but I think many of them get back to just being afraid to even take the risk. I mean, the way I was raised, anybody who says safety first is setting themselves up to fail at their actual mission. And I think that's part of the problem, just from the way I talk with locals is they see too much downside, not enough benefit, and I think that's wrong.
And Ray, your last bullet there, I think it does have short-term benefit. I think we've got short-term capacity issues.
I agree with that. It's a short-term crisis we have is having the workforce to do the work.
Right.
That needs to be something that, in my opinion, the task force needs to deal with if we're gonna be successful, because we know prescribed fire is one of the tools we have to use, but we have to build up to. We're not gonna run out and start doing broadcast burn on the front range in Colorado in July, which is what I heard in a land management conference, right? Like, what?
Yeah.
Great.
October maybe.
What-
January.
But then, so, okay, I'm hearing all of this and I'm wondering, implement a strategic plan for prescribed fire. I'm wondering is this then a near-term priority to even lay out, to get here, we need all of these other things in place, which is like the strategic plan can help put in place? Or do we think it's already documented and clear enough, everything that needs to happen, that actually developing a prescribed fire strategic plan might be redundant?
And maybe this is where we fine tune a little bit of what it says, is that I think we would all agree that we need to make realistic investments in the capability and capacity to do prescribed fire.
Yeah,
That's a
and
little
we,
different to me than strategic plan. Fits in there, but it's a little different.
yeah, and we, like Mike said, we do have a strategic plan for it.
In Colorado or federally?
In Colorado,
DFPC does.
we put together a prescribed
great.
fire working group to do some of that. But again, it's not like we can do a lot of implementation. Again, this is where it gets really, which goes back to, because we had to be very specific to say, this is about state and private land, because we can't tell DOI or US Forest Service what they should be doing. We can't take this, and even if you're gonna have a true strategic plan,
Yeah,
you have to erase boundaries and say, this is what we gotta do, which we've already agreed is 5 to 10 years, but we gotta invest in more burning.
great.
Okay.
So then for me, thinking like of the actual recommendation, in progress, there is a strategic plan. We collectively understand the benefit and need, but there's a lot of sort of dependencies that would need to happen up front for it to be a more long-term viable solution. So I'm putting this in that green color, and then when we get to the like little summary of what's in progress, we can capture the notes that you just talked about of like strategic plan in place, and here's kind of what's happening here in Colorado related to it. Okay, so we did talk about this. I took notes on it. Do we want to come back to 17, invest in fuels reductions treatment?
I think that ties in, I think for the purpose of this, we can tie that into, or you can tie prescribed fire as part of the fuels treatment into that,
You bet.
because
And I have
we
that here.
combine.
It's one of the fuel treatment
Right.
tools, and they're totally integrated, right? You gotta, in most areas, you have to treat the fuels first and then burn, so they're all intertwined.
And it even ties into the bigger conversation earlier, because logging can be part of the.
That's right, absolutely.
What are the realistic solutions?
And so to this one then, to me, feels like this is also in progress.
For sure.
Yes, we're already investing in these. So I'm gonna also mark it as in progress, and then when we come into like really kind of describing and documenting this one, we can explain more, and I captured those notes from the conversation on this topic earlier. But we can see if there's more to discuss. Okay, 19, invest in wood processing facilities and wood utilization sector. And this was, I think, some conversation around this happened earlier as well. Anything else to add right now? I'll show it again. Would we say that we are in fact in Colorado investing in wood processing facilities, or was I hearing that there's more of a divestment?
I wouldn't say it's a divestment, Ray. I would say we need to start like this is a key component to the forestry sector that is in need of attention. So I wouldn't say we've stopped investing. I would say we need to start. I put into the chat a little bit earlier, though, the State Forest Service published a statewide biomass study in the last year or so to show some potential opportunities county by county. It's not as fine grained as probably everybody would want, a statewide study to be, but it's a starting point. So yeah, this is a big issue that we need to focus on, whether it's this group, fire risk group, or just the state as a whole, as we talk about the potential of more dead trees, where those trees going, our firewood. I've heard a lot now, just as in a quick meeting yesterday, about the firewood industry is full. So we need some more opportunities for wood products and biomass in our state.
And I would just add, based on Mike Alexander's comment earlier, in Brad's conversation, I mean, if the commercial market doesn't want our wood, then we have to somehow create the mindset change of we're not doing this to make a profit. We are doing this to reduce risk, and maybe that needs to get handed off to the local engagement and public communications working groups, because our trees just aren't really great construction materials to begin with, for the most part.
Is this, go ahead.
I would just, in my mind, again, this is where it gets very blurred on what we're doing versus what other groups are doing.
I was just gonna
It's
ask.
kind of a forestry thing.
Yeah.
It does impact our risk, but that's more of, okay, that group should figure out.
Great. That's exactly what I
We
was
should
gonna
worry
ask.
about how do we burn it, how do we,
Okay.
that would be more our wheelhouse, but telling us what to burn, that's them. Right.
I can get behind that.
Great. So this is something to have another task force group review. Okay, fund research and pilots for biofuels and biomass. Is this similarly what we think would be more the forest watershed biomass group?
Yep.
Great.
That was too easy.
That's what we're trying to get to.
Delegation will get easier as we go through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is easy. What else can we do?
Excellent,
I'm
okay.
in one of those other groups, I'm like, oh, what am I doing, delegating myself?
It's all right, wait till we get there, let's do it.
Yeah. Okay, this might be some more. Incentivize adoption of innovative wood product technologies and processing systems.
It's just not our wheelhouse.
And do we think it's the same kind of forest watershed biomass, or is this more the markets?
It's the market.
I think we just categorize this as not it.
That feels pretty squarely in that timber markets group, or wood markets, whatever that group is.
Great, Abby, thanks for your note here. So for this one, increase flexibility of federal funds across ownership boundaries. And Abby left a comment saying completed at state level, question mark.
is
Oh
probably.
yeah, that was notes I was taking during our last meeting. I think somebody mentioned it was like almost completed, so I marked that on a couple of them.
Yeah, the issue is like, we've got Good Neighbor Authority with some of the federal agencies, with, state and local agencies, and then we've got some state programs that can do work on federal lands. What we don't have is full cross-boundary integration of all the different federal sources. But that's probably also not something this task force can solve.
But could be like maybe a recommendation related to this
Yeah,
recommendation?
Yeah.
Julie and Abby have to go fix it.
Yeah. Because on some of that, you get into what, say, federal, if it's federal funds, federal laws related to acquisitions.
But even.
Well, you've also got the duplication of program issue. So for example, we facilitate FEMA funds in our agency, and FEMA is willing, depending on what year, to invest $20 million up to $50 million in a wildfire mitigation project, but none of it can be spent on federal land. And when you get west of I-25 in Colorado, that becomes a significant challenge. So that's what I meant by the full federal cross-boundary integration is lacking. And it's not just physical boundaries, it's authoritative boundaries as well.
Mark and Allison, are you aware of any state funding that could be used on federal land?
Yeah, furworm can.
Yeah, and co-swap too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, furworm is limited. Federal lands are limited in no more than 49% of the project area.
And co-swap doesn't have that limitation.
Yeah.
But it has other limitations.
Brad, we've been over this.
Yeah, I know. We can talk later.
Shouldn't complain, because I got 2 of them, so.
Just a comment about that, there has to be realistic conversations about how much we have our own mitigation issues to worry about, fuels treatments issues. And it's really easy to find work that needs to be done on federal lands, but where's the true cost share agreements with how that's done? It's not a shot at anybody in this meeting, but realistically, if you step back and go, we're using state lands to protect or treat federal lands that they're supposed to be treating themselves. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, but I think we have to find a balance with the way we do that. That's long term.
Okay.
To support what we're doing, but.
So this is gonna be maybe that long 10+ year, or like, medium long, start to think about it, find a long-term solution.
When I look at everything through the lens of prioritizing life and property first, as a local agency, right? The land resources are completely important, but not in my priority scale of what in the top 2 for sure. And so everything we look at is the fuel treatment effectiveness. If your priorities are solely life and property, the effectiveness gets exponentially lower the further you get away from the people and the things, the houses.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time and effort in our area trying to get federal partners to bring their projects in towards the community.
Sure.
And of course, we lean on the community to do the same thing.
Right.
Some of them are very risk adverse and they don't like working in your community.
Typically, our matrix then in terms of thinking for project priorities, prioritization, closer you get to the WUI, it's a little bit different prioritization type thought process versus doing the treatment in North Powderhorn Wilderness, for example. It's a complete, we're looking at completely
Different values, different priorities, different goals, yeah.
We can do it, but it's just, it's also like then our funding source would have to be a little bit more like depending on what the funding source is, we have to kind of honor that funding source too.
Absolutely.
And then it looks like the next one is kind of similar. So allow a share of federal hazardous fuels funding to be used across ownership boundaries.
I don't think that has any relevance.
For me, they're identical because, yeah, but to me, they're identical because the only boundary issue I care about is federal, non-federal. Private, county government, city government, that's all fair game.
Yeah, I think that recommendation was specifically to Congress that
Great,
the money should go across the other side of the fence too.
excellent. So this is like not really task force purview.
This wasn't about Colorado spending money on federal lands, this is about
Great.
federal agencies being able to spend money on Colorado lands.
Yeah.
Great, so I'm making a not task force purview an ugly color, so we know it's ugly color.
Stay away.
I think that segues right into 26, the G&A.
Expand the good neighbor authority to additional federal agencies?
It would allow additional, with the G&A, you can work on those jurisdictional boundaries. So you could have federal funds that are used on lands other than federal lands.
Any other thoughts on this one?
Foresters feel on G&A, right?
Yes.
So which federal agencies don't.
And that's why I looked at this one and I was like, in terms of major land management agency who does not have
I'm
this.
guessing Park Service.
I'll ping somebody, see if I can find that out, actually.
Fish and Wildlife.
I've never heard anybody mention good neighbor authority with the Park Service. From any of the counties that surround Rocky Mountain or the sand dunes.
Does this one feel like a task force relevant recommendation or something to engage with?
It would,
Because the state can't expand it, correct? So that would have to be a federal.
it's a federal,
That's the impression.
yes.
So our recommendation could be, hey,
Back to
federal
Julie,
government.
I think
Do this.
this one we punt to Abby.
You know when they say we're taking act of Congress?
And that's where all these things, like the authorities, we have to follow all those federal authorities that we have related to G&A. But I can at least find out if some of the other DOI agencies have that as an authority.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next one, this might be something to put to the forest biomass group, but increase assistance for private landowners to dispose of woody biomass. Well, that's engaging.
That's like one of our top things we're dealing with locally in my county is right that when commissioners come to me and say, okay, you told me pine beetle's here, it's killing trees and it's raising fire risk, what do we do? How are we helping our residents get that dead material off their property and what do they do with it, right? So to me, that's a short term, that's happening now. How do we do that? How do we address it?
Okay.
And that to me is
Absolutely.
air curtain burners.
Yeah,
and
absolutely, yes,
people that can operate them.
yes, exactly.
You
To me, that's
wear
where,
them up and down the front.
Okay.
that's where government fits this niche, right? Like, okay, you got dead tree on your property, that's on you, but we're gonna help you with how to deal with it and lower the cost of that by giving you an air curtain burner to bring it to, or a biochar plant, or a slash mulch site, whatever those solutions look like. To me, that's a partnership between government and private.
Okay, so this might be then like a higher short-term priority that we could make
I
real
think so.
movement on. So we can still come back to this, but this will be like yes, this is a short-term priority we want to engage with.
Because of the risk, the fire risk, right? That's our angle and our working group, right? To me,
Yep.
right?
And
Beetle kills trees, raises fire risk. This is how we reduce that risk by helping our private landowners or county or whatever. How to remove that fuel to lower risk.
In a realistic.
But it's also a very visible, beneficial concrete action.
Yeah, that's
I
a
like
good
that.
point.
Exactly, Mark. And that was number one. Like when Ray interviewed me, and there's what do we do in this task force? What do we want to accomplish? Real things, not just papers.
Right.
Not 340-page reports.
I don't need another 3 reminder.
It's substantially cheaper than, supporting, creating additional lumber mills and things like that.
Right.
It looks good too, to the point, man.
And I think Allison mentioned that map, that analysis earlier of, where can people take this biomass? And there's not a lot of places, especially when you talk about approved beetle kill material. So if we can raise the capacity there, I think that's a win-win.
And I think another benefit of it is it doesn't take all the responsibility off of the landowner. Right. So it is a partnership action with landowners. It's not we're going to do this for you and pay for it. And
that's right.
Could it be something like they do the treatment themselves, like they remove the fuels, and then this group takes it away?
Yeah, that's what we're working on locally at our county level. It's like you get it off your land. We are looking at ways, can we help transport? We certainly are providing a source of where to take it to. We're working on the transportation end of it, but absolutely, like the whole thing is get it off your property, and then we'll see where we can help.
And in some cases, it could even be, hey, you just got to get it down to a size it'll fit in the trailer.
Right, right.
But they still got to do something.
Right.
Man, sounds like a business model.
It sure does.
Sounds like I could just start that business.
I heard it going.
You chop, we truck.
And Ray,
Yeah.
right, like this one is so directly related to 19, and so hopefully, and in some ways 20, recommendation 19 and 20, right? So maybe hopefully after we get through this whole list, we could sort of bucket some of these too and how they all relate to each other. Because in order to increase assistance for private landowners, we probably need to invest in wood processing facilities or sort yards or things like that at a local and regional level.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I like this one more than the other two, though, is because it just clearly states for landowners.
Excellent. Okay, so
It's labor savings too.
okay. Expedite support for water utilities during immediate and long-term wildfire recovery. Excellent. Make faster support for water.
That to me is a punt from this group.
Big punt.
Yeah, Ray, this list was the throw everything and see what sticks.
Yeah.
Starting.
Gosh, you actually put it down, big punt.
Yeah. I'm taking notes. So, is this a ugly brown, we're not dealing with this, or is this it's not within the task force purview to do it, but we can make a recommendation on which body might deal with it?
To me, it falls into the watershed group and they can decide how that fits
okay.
in their priorities of the work they're doing.
There's some of was it Denver Water, I think, has maps on that one too, for
Yeah.
example.
Excellent. Okay, so this is another. Okay. Identify health risks from wildfire contaminated water and develop evidence-based guidance. Similarly,
Punt to CDPHE.
Bigger punt.
Bigger.
99 yards.
Yeah, like the ground's working well, wouldn't it?
No, not to the task force. That's to CDPHE. That's their job
At
in
the risk of.
in the water quality division.
At the risk of saying something that I shouldn't, but as also a 1,200-pound gorilla, CDPHE has to be present at these types of conversations because everything we're talking about trying to do is going to be in direct conflict with air quality, water quality, or something else, that there's a roadblock that we can't get to. So, I mean, we say 30 air curtain burners, try to get a permit for an air curtain burner. Durango Fire has one. They can't get a permit to use.
Are you serious?
Air quality stuff.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like,
That,
we have to build this bridge.
So maybe like longer task force long term, right? If we're going to end of 2027 or so, maybe like something we could try and facilitate kind of some months from now would be we get through some of this and then we set up a meeting that we help facilitate with CDDHP.
To shorten that, I would say if we need to establish ways to build gaps between, environmental concerns and watershed public safety concerns because they're in conflict.
and just to that exact point, at a very hyper-local level, my number one challenge to implementing prescribed fire is air quality. Now, we had to jump through a whole bunch of other hoops to get to where we are right now, for that to be the number one, because before it was training, experience, the people, all of that. We got through those. Now, it's the air quality permit.
And when you get to right conditions,
Yes.
from an air quality, you want 100-degree temperatures, 4% humidity, and 30-mile-an-hour winds.
Not so good for the
Not good
prescription.
for public safety.
Yeah.
So where's our compromise?
Really like the acronym is CDPHE.
Thank you. I just put letters in. I think they were all the correct letters.
You get the right letters.
I fixed it. I fixed it.
Oh,
But you can unfix it.
now it's not letting me, now we have nothing. Can you just put it back in, please? Now everyone's watching me type and I can't do it.
That's the hardest.
Oh,
And Julie's got her hand up too, great.
I just, it seems to me that a policy conversation with CDPHE, and I don't know, like, to what extent they're sort of bound by, I don't know, whatever regulations that they may be facing, but that in some cases this is an alignment of ultimately it is a public health goal to have good air quality and, for reducing the likelihood of catastrophic fires or major smoke exposure to communities for fires that do get out of control, that it, eventually, I think in the bigger picture and the longer term, does achieve those air quality goals as well.
Agreed, and EPA plays a big role on that because EPA
Yeah.
often drives what CDPHE does. And
but sometimes they take it an extra step or two.
Mm-hmm.
so that's again where there's things I think we can do at the local level to help support this. But we still need, it's a congressional recommendation because it starts there too, so.
So help me think this, it's not just, it's a punt in terms of this task force in this moment can't solve this. But there could be a recommendation around needing more kind of in line with some of the other things I'm hearing, like cross-jurisdictional or, cross-agency partnership or collaboration, or at least some sort of dialogue and solution finding kind of process.
And I think that what we finally agreed to with our EPA members on this commission was that there's no such thing as good smoke, but there is smoke that's worse than other smoke. And so if we can find a balance of what is acceptable bad smoke, that's where we have to get.
And there's also things you can do on prescribed fire days of letting members of the public know
Yeah.
to also mitigate that potential risk, because this is like, it's like one of these conundrums of you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Right.
It's just like there's risk that you, the outcomes of catastrophic are far worse. Going back to G,
Right.
somebody look up something real quick too, and in general, federal land means under G-NIGHT's National Forest System land or public land is defined under section 1702, and that includes Park Service, BLM, wildlife, National Wildlife Refuge.
Thank you. I heard someone say my name online, I think. Are they frozen? No, I'm crazy, that's fine.
That helps, this group being crazy helps.
Then I'm in the right place.
Is that the indoctrination process?
Mental health evaluation, except you have to rate poor. Okay.
That's good.
Support local use of best technology and consistent methods for evacuation. Do we think this should happen, yes or no? Best methods and tools for evacuation.
We're waiting for Mark to start.
I mean, I don't see this as something for the task force. I mean, from what everybody said, fire risk changes some, but the pine beetle don't necessarily increase that risk. And a lot of local communities are already doing this.
I'm gonna say pine beetle does change that risk, and increase that risk.
I would say.
But at the same time, I don't necessarily disagree with what you said, Mark. I think, I'll go back to what Mike said. It's what level of government, right? I mean, and evacuation is not a state government thing, right? State government shouldn't be telling people. We should provide tools to support locals with evacuation efforts, but the decisions of how that happens, to do that on a 64 county basis just can't be done.
And frankly, if we can't outlaw one way in, one way out development, then we can't give them the solution to that bad decision.
Right.
Sure enough there.
Abby has her hand raised.
Abby, thank you.
Yeah, I agree with what you all are saying. I think part of why I ranked it on mine is I liked what Chief White had in the rationale of like standardizing planning support. So certainly not like the state or the task force telling people like exactly what it looks like, but I was just trying to think of which of these were the most actionable. In the immediate as well. So not tied to it. I think I totally hear what you all are saying. And I think you all know better than me what the state and locals are currently doing and the need. But that was kind of the why I included that on my list initially.
So do we think then that this is, so kind of two choices that I'm seeing, that this really isn't something that we keep on the list for this working group and thus the task force to kind of reflect on? Or is this one that is something that a recommendation could be that, it could be beneficial for there to be some sort of standardizing support process at the state level? Or it could be, this is in progress within the purview of like county or local government level.
I think it's beyond the purview of this working group. But it's, so I'm not sure how that fits in, but it certainly is worth, it could be along the lines of a recommendation for broader support, but it's beyond the purview of what this group is focused on, I think.
I think it's beyond the purview, but I also think that if this working group is telling the public that there's going to be increased risk of fire and fire spread's going to increase, well, create some sort of statement that says this is important that you guys work on this, so show them a lot of it.
Yeah, I think that, I like how you said that, it's that we're not gonna solve this, but our recommendation is that communities address this problem in a way that, addresses the risk, blah, blah, blah. And the only other thing I would say is that common terminology is important, which tends to be another challenging issue.
Huge.
Which everybody says it's my county, I'll tell people what this means, like, that's great, but we're very nomadic in Colorado. So when I live in Garfield County and I come to Douglas County and we say different words and expect me to, sorry.
No, that makes sense, and maybe where some of Abby's recommendation on state level standardization, at least terminology standardization, particularly for like an emergency response issue, could be beneficial.
Semantics matter.
The one thing I would add to that, though, if we are going to recommend that our recommendation tell them or recommend that their evacuation planning should have multiple scenarios. Right. So, for example, if you think back to the Marshall Fire when all the kids were out of school and parents were at work, good luck telling parents they're not going to their house to get their kids while you're trying to evacuate that neighborhood.
I guess to me, when I think again about pine beetle and this working group and what we're focused on, it's more around the recommendation of prioritizing and focusing treatments on communities and evacuation corridors, right? As opposed to necessarily the larger, broader planning, but to focus because mountain pine beetle has increased wildfire risk in communities, then we should focus, we're recommending to jurisdictions to focus those fuel removal and treatments on communities and specifically evacuation routes.
Okay, I'm glad we have the recording because what you just said was great, but I didn't capture it. Big punt was easier to write. But no, I like that. I think that's great. And so I'll be able to capture that. But yeah, I think there can be some, and this point of the public wanting to see and hear kind of what is happening, particularly around these tough fire seasons and risk and some of that fear, being able to come out with some clear recommendations and then also some clear actions, and having both of those being balanced makes sense. So should we take a quick 5-10 minute break, or do we want to keep rolling ahead?
I say roll and bio is needed.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, agreed.
What does the blue wig mean? Or the neon blue?
I'm kind of losing track,
Okay.
but it means like a recommendation that will be sort of like general but not within the task force's purview, but something that we can still say.
But I also recognize you're doing all the work, so if you need a break, take a break.
No, I'm good. I'm a big fan of like, we're just going till we're done.
Yeah, I get it.
So this
Without
actually
stopping.
just kind of came up, but so maybe it's already wrapped up in the thought that we had, but establish standardized wildfire evacuation terminology and products.
That's a big one.
So some of that standardized terminology just came up, but anything else related to this specific point?
Ooh, well, you're going down the road there of legislation mandating terminology, which will get a lot of pushback from the 64 counties.
Well, it might be as simple, if we're gonna make a public statement that this isn't our thing, but local communities need to work on this. And maybe you just add to the statement that, they can look to some of the standards that are already out there, whether it's Mexico or whatever.
But it's to that point, we have a Front Range County group that's been working on wildfire initiated community conflagrations. We've all decided kind of as a core group to adopt standardized terminology amongst ourselves with the idea of trying to avoid legislative mandates on words to use.
I would also offer that as I used to be the communications director for Summit County government, and we poured a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into how to communicate these things to these concepts to our community. And so I think that I totally agree that like mandating terminology to the 64 counties is not realistic or advised. But at the same time, I think that a lot of counties, it's a challenge to develop those materials and put them out. And so I think that providing some kind of unified language and template, so, you know, here's how you explain this to your community. And so you can almost do it by just lightening their workload.
You're breaking up just a bit for us, so apologies that we missed some of that. I think if you added some notes in there, that would be great, but I think, did I hear that you're saying through some of your earlier work, some of that is already, like those materials are out there that could already be shared with communities? Or are you suggesting that something needs to be developed that could then be shared with local counties as a here's how you can, explain things to your communities?
Yeah, I think that, I guess my is that if from the state perspective, you can provide resources that have that kind of best terminology that communities would use it. So just offering up those resources and templates might be an effective way to get them all to use the same kind of gold standard terminology and have it be more consistent across counties.
I think also on this, I think it can be lumped into the evacuation category. But for some additional context, this was a recommendation to Congress about terminology.
Right.
Because I think using Summit County is you got all these people from Florida that are in Summit County for part of the year, and all these people in Summit County that are in Florida for another part of the year.
Yeah.
And the terminology we use for get out for hurricanes and fires is different. So
That makes sense.
that was more of what that broader thing was about.
So a lower concern here, but we can still kind of make a statement on it and, maybe suggest if there's potential support.
It's out of the scope, but yeah. And then I think, and I'm guessing what they're alluding to in products in terms of every county has their own software, right? Own registration source for those emergency alerts. I'm guessing that there are folks that are recommending, one clearinghouse where you register your address in this one, and it's no matter what, it's the same one for the whole state or country or whatever. But
And that definitely feels out of the wheelhouse.
yeah, oh yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, accelerate reimbursements to wildfire response entities. And is that like counties, is that NGOs, private contracts, or who are the entities?
I'm guessing that's referring to like local districts, local agencies, or, and then it takes a year or 2 years to get reimbursed.
So this is probably out of the purview then, because you guys wouldn't be reimbursing yourselves, right? Yeah, so this is really speaking to the federal government. Is that how everyone else interprets it?
I'm not sure the genesis of that statement, so it's hard to say.
Is there some sort of program in place where the state of Colorado, through one of its agencies, would be reimbursing local?
DFPC is the central point for reimbursements, and as local cooperators, we bill through DFPC, who goes through their process, who then, recoups funds from the feds. So that process is well established. There's room for improvement, but I'm guessing just the genesis of that is that if departments are unable to get reimbursed in a timely fashion, they're less likely to contribute to fire response efforts outside their local jurisdiction. So that reduces capacity in fire response. I'm just guessing all this.
I'm sure Director Morgan can add to this, but my guess is on the federal level, states often wait 3 and 4 to 5 years for reimbursement from the federal agencies,
Yeah.
so they're hoping to speed that up. We've had a separate group meeting on, local state reimbursements, and that's not going very well at all this year or last year, but that's a separate issue, I think.
It's gonna get worse before it gets better.
Right.
What's a 40%
And
increase?
then- And then we're gonna find out in 2 years that the federal agencies no longer allowed to pay those or something. But
Right.
That's my positive outlook on life.
Always an optimist.
I don't know if that's for this group.
It's out of this group.
Out of this group.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I should just say big fun.
I think Abby has probably an
Oh.
important little side note on that issue.
Yeah, sorry. I was just gonna, I think Mike covered a lot of it, but I think the federal side is maybe not the only slowdown, but certainly a very significant one for these funds. So I do think it is largely outside of our scope. I think FEMA can take years to get those funds even to the state before they're dispersed from there. So that's why I think Mike largely covered it, but just was going to emphasize that. That I know there's some work to do on the federal side.
Yeah, well, that can be our next task force.
DUI enforcement.
And there are some efforts to try and streamline some of that FEMA stuff underway at the federal level, but we'll see if we can get there this year.
Excellent. Okay, so more effective resource ordering.
I think what this was, again, this was a recommendation to Congress. So you have two systems. You have your local mutual aid system and you have IROC. And the gap between those two is about 72 hours. So it was really about tightening that gap. I think we're doing a pretty good job in Colorado. We have room for improvements.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. But I think if I think about some of these things, about some immediate needs, it's some conversations around truly closest available resource, based upon the mission, if it's, I think, so I think there's things that we can do immediately to not have an engine from rifle respond to a fire in Brad's fire protection district that's on federal land. That's the first due.
Well, that's the first two, but man, they get there faster than anybody off the front range. No, I didn't rank. I agree, there's a lot of work going on that. There's still some improvement.
Yes.
If I were to add anything to what you said, it would just be that, maybe in the state, we need to, when we think of this in the Pine Beetle context and the fire danger we're anticipating, maybe there needs to be a fund for pre-position during those extreme red flag days and things like that. Whether that's state engines or whether that's being able to pre-po local fire resources that are available and keep them in state, that would be my one adder on all that.
And I think one of the things we talked about earlier in this task force too was you hit a certain threshold that we should be going to an automatic aid system versus, and by that I mean even like aviation, right? Part of why you guys are getting praised because you guys dispatch your helicopter right out of the chutes because you have one county and that's your
It's a
thing.
lot easier.
If I send a helicopter before somebody else asks for it, I'm gonna get screamed at.
Doesn't work.
So we need to establish, and this gets into standards of cover, performance metrics and all those things, and we hit certain thresholds. We should be able to pre-position resources, we should be doing automatic aid versus mutual aid, and we should just build a more robust response system. And especially given, I still think there's some work that needs to be done in this area that this group should tackle. That's my 2 cents. I think we're making progress.
For the record, if you want to sign an auto aid agreement on your helicopter, I think it's fine.
Okay, I'll sign it.
There you go.
I'll sign it.
There we go. I'll take one too.
Yeah. If it's available, it'll go.
I know, but see, people don't understand that. I order you guys all the time, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't actually understand that.
It is free of charge.
They're worried
And it's
about
not just our helicopters, it's DOI helicopters and US Forest Service helicopters. Because we worked that out at a state level, to go send the closest one, free of charge.
Absolutely.
If we're still fighting fire in 12 to 24 hours, we'll figure out a funding source and start billing each other. But I think there's work to do.
Yeah.
So on this line item, essentially there's work to do on closest resources and pre-position funding.
Pre-pro funding, more refined auto aid agreements, true closest available resource.
The emergency management group is also a huge fan of that idea, that concept, would support it wholeheartedly.
So maybe this is higher priority than we ranked it initially.
To me, I didn't mark it, but in my mind, it was super high priority because it's a short term
Yeah.
and if you get into, without getting into the debate around good fire, bad fire, is that if you wanna stop post-fire flooding, put it out.
Put it out. Absolutely. I think that's a high priority. I'm with you.
Great, excellent. It is high priority color. Okay,
Well, I did rank that.
increase access to wildland qualifications and training for all partners.
I'm gonna go back to workforce capacity. We've talked about that in other areas, but yeah.
Yeah, I think we just published the needs assessment, just went out last night, and the number 2 need for training in local fire departments is fire and wildland urban interface. So there's a big gap there. So again, I think we can lump it into the workforce piece to consolidate.
Well, I would throw in the prescribed burn stuff as well, part of that.
Yeah, agreed.
And so does this, when you say that, do you mean when this group continues to consider prescribed fire workforce and so on, you'll consider this? Or that this is maybe not a priority for this task force to discuss now because, this working group in the task force to discuss now? Or is it something that goes to the workforce working group?
I think it's just part of 55,
Great.
they all ranked high.
And
More
it's
of us ranked high.
probably being addressed at the fire commission. Maybe or maybe not.
We're not.
Not really.
I mean, there's some things around training. I mean, and I guess the frustrating part of that recommendation around training came in 21, I think. And that is the only recommendation that has not been
Really?
approved. Out of everything else that's been recommended is training.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah, which,
Ouch.
it's a particular member of the Joint Budget Committee that doesn't think the state should have anything to do. Fire is your problem, not ours. And it's like, we pay for the ones that quit being their problem. So isn't our best interest to invest in keeping it from becoming our problem?
That's what I say all the time too. Districts, keep it yours.
Keep it yours.
I also think that recommendation reads very structured fire hazard
Yeah.
heavy, and
It
doesn't
has to be.
really, it needs to be all true, all hazards, and green line,
Agreed.
and then that becomes easier to sell.
Okay, create and fund more training opportunities for mitigation and fire management workforce, which is, you just said 54 is lumped in 55, and that this is maybe a high priority.
I would say. Especially if you include the prescribed burn piece in there.
I think also that's becoming more and more important as we're kind of seeing the frequency and severity of fires increasing, because, you know, in the past, folks who were on the suppression side had maybe 75% downtime, that then they were able to do mitigation work, and now there's just less and less downtime because the fire season never stops.
And I would add to it, so when we talk training opportunities, people tend to think of that as formal training and education. I think we have to make sure we're also funding trainee, task force trainee time, right? Otherwise people never get those qualifications in the wildfire area. So we may not need an ICT 4 trainee for this little fire, but we should have funding there to get someone there and work those qualifications. Or even on a prescribed burn, because there's relatively few broadcast burns.
Right.
Plenty of people will wanna work on their broadcast burn qualifications.
Yeah.
So like opening up task books is also not just like a formal training, but
Look
like,
at it more as completing task force.
yeah, completing.
Don't until we complete them, we're not building capacity.
Okay. Other thoughts on this one right now? Okay, let's move to the next one. Okay, expand collaborative pre-fire response planning and potential operational delineations.
I didn't put any comment on this, but I have a comment.
Let's hear it.
So, well, this is one of my buttons with my local forest, right? We spend a ton of time redrawing pod lines, and yet nobody seems to have any interest in treating those pod lines. If we've said these pod lines are areas where we can capture and hold fire, why are we not reinforcing those? Why are we doing a clear cut 6 miles in and not?
Valid.
It was a fuels project, yeah. So I don't know if that's this group or not, but that's my current mission in my county.
Allison?
Yeah, I think that's totally.
$6.
Yeah, I think this totally connects with the other group, the Forest and Watershed group, and I think there's an opportunity that you're bringing up, Brad. And we just had a pods talk. I was at a state foresters meeting 2 days ago with some Western state foresters, and there was talk about, the some counties, some areas are still, sitting down, drawing those pod lines. I mean, and Brad, actually, I'm just so happy you all are sitting down and talking about that. But the way to get the funding to activate the pods, that seems like an opportunity, Ray, that we could possibly highlight and how we can get those pods into action.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the planning is planning, but it's not reducing risk till we do the work.
Yes, so I see an opportunity here.
Okay. Integrate national response to wildfire and post-fire impacts across agencies and scales.
I don't really understand that one. Don't we already do that?
I've drawn a blank on what that one was.
Yeah.
To me, that's just, an add-on to the earlier one about federal funding crossing boundaries.
Or is that relative to, there's suppression money to be had right now for a wildfire, but it's a long, arduous process for the flood mitigation afterwards. Is it that integration?
That's probably what that one's about. I'm drawing a blank on detail, but I think you're probably right.
Task
And
force.
I think some of it even relates to because I think the bear teams, the burned area emergency response, I think those just belong to Interior. Is that right? So you're not necessarily getting a bear team if it's a national forest that burns.
I remember after our
No, I think
200,000 acre
I think
fire, there was
the
some
Forest
discussion
Service
whether they were
has bear
even gonna
teams.
bring it.
The Forest Service has bear teams too, I think, Mark.
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, if this one's about integrating across agencies, maybe they need to stop having separate bear teams. I know the Wildland Fire Service is still kind of split between DOI SBA, but
Well, to your point, Mark, after East Troublesome, the only reason we had any sort of bear assessment on private ground was just because Northern Water was involved.
well, you got to remember, Brad, fires only trespass one direction. They only trespass onto federal land, right? They don't trespass off.
Yeah, that's not how I remember that day, but
I'm talking about if you ask them. If
Does this feel like our working group, this task force purview to integrate national response? Or is there like at least a recommendation related?
I think this is one that is still more directed at Congress because it's about, again, it's about when we talk about fire doesn't recognize boundaries, the reality of it is it does. It depends on what phase of the fire, what part of the fire you're talking about is it versus, so I think this is more a federal thing.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. And we have some legislation related to that. So agreed that I think it's a federal piece.
Thank you, Abby.
let us know how we can help.
Yes, for sure, Abby, let us know how we can help.
Will do.
Okay, next, increased deployment speed of mitigation and recovery funds.
That is kind of that same.
Same, yeah. What number was
I
that?
think that's another finger of FEMA. I'm not sure which finger.
I mean, I made that
Just
my number
accelerate.
one. I made that my number one, but that's because it's also related to comments I've provided for the FEMA Review Council report, as well as the Fixing Emergency Management in America Act that's sitting in the House. The number one challenge I see with the post-fire programs is all of the normal federal roadblocks still stand in the way of implementing things on the ground.
But I'm not, I totally agree, it's a major challenge, but I'm not sure that this group can solve that.
Yeah.
And that's fair. I wasn't thinking that narrowly when I made it.
I mean, I think that's something that we, put maybe in a parking lot that when Congressman Goose introduces a bill, we'll be there to help support it, so.
So if there were something we could recommend, the task force supports it, but the task force won't put something forward.
That's a Congress thing.
Abby, is it helpful to the congressman if this group, submits some kind of side recommendations that aren't necessarily for Colorado, but could, if we had a wish list for federal?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that would be super helpful. And I know my boss would be happy to be helpful. And I'm sure the other delegation folks too. So yeah, I think that definitely makes sense. We can have kind of a separate bucket of, some top priorities for Congress or whatever that looks like. But yeah, definitely helpful for us.
I could sort of envision as part of the ultimate report and the piece of it that comes out of this group is like one of the action items of this group is to recommend certain federal policies to legislators and to just kind of sidebar bullet those out.
Okay, so we can come back to this thought, and then if something does come forward that we don't put forward, we could bring it to the task force as possibly supporting it or recommending it or something like that.
Yeah, we had a couple that we said were Julie and Abby's problem. We could pull together.
Big punt. Okay, authorize.
Yep, and we're happy to help take those on.
Well, especially where they're already in the federal commission recommendations.
Yeah, and there's a couple of these that we already have done a little bit of work on. I know some of the cross-boundary stuff, which Brad, you and I have talked about, and some of the bear stuff as well. So there's definitely some overlap with things my boss has done, but also like the FEMA Act that Mark was referencing has a ton of FEMA reforms, some of which are covered in here, some are not. So there's a number of things we can point to, but happy to look at additional things that we can do too.
Yeah, and that might be a good, like, one of the shorter meeting periods. There could be a targeted conversation about like what is coming forward or what might be recommendations to Congress, or there could be a targeted shorter, like during the virtual working session conversation on that. Okay, authorize integrated planning across all phases of wildfire, including post-fire impacts.
That's not us.
And it's already happening.
Okay, not us. Fund local assessment of values at risk from post-fire impacts.
I mean, I feel like that's wrapped up in HMP, isn't it, Mark?
Well, no, when you get into the post-fire stuff, it's not.
Okay, yeah.
Unless you get the assessment and then, do an informal kind of in-progress update to it. But, going back to the comment earlier about the bear teams, if you get the results from a bear team, regardless of federal agency, that allows you to do that. DNR also has what they call them now, the WERT teams, the Water Emergency Response Team, because we don't want to call them Colorado Bear. So the challenge is just getting what is our new flood risk from this burn scar, and then the rest of it is the existing process.
I mean, I think between HMP, CWPPs, all the other processes we have that identify values at risk, it seems like we don't need to address that one.
Yeah, I agree.
Would we say this is in progress, or like this is happening on the ground? Here are the entities that are dealing with it.
I mean, it's in progress, but it has no finish line.
Yeah. Finish line.
Oh,
Yeah, it's constantly evolving, sure. Cool.
Fund pre-event sheltering and housing capacity planning.
Hunt to DOLA.
Yeah, that's out of our purview.
Okay.
They have an entire division of housing. Let them have it.
Okay, expand flexibility of disaster grants for post-disaster and permanent housing solutions.
Big pun.
Yeah, this feels outside
Yeah.
of this task force purview.
I think those are mainly federal grants too, so that would be a congressional change.
Okay, create a separate federal assistance category with enhanced sheltering and flexibility. Does not feel like we're gonna create our own separate federal assistance category.
Boot it.
All around.
Authorize interdisciplinary cross-jurisdictional burned area assessment.
Just talked about that. Yeah.
Is this something that like we can recommend Colorado authorize? And is this
Colorado does it if the funding is available in DNR. But you've also got the Wildfire Ready Watershed program now that does it too. So I don't think we need to address it.
Is this something that we would say like it's currently happening in Colorado? Or is this like Brown, not even close to our purview?
I think it's Brown.
Yeah, Mark, were you saying that, I mean, a piece of it is the federal side too, right? There's some changes maybe that'd be helpful on the intersection of like worse than this DOI outside of like our scope, but for Congress, if I'm phrasing your stuff right.
Okay, so next we have build and retain forest products and biomass workforce. This feels like this goes to the other working groups that are working on these issues.
Yes.
Make surplus equipment available to volunteer response organizations.
That already happened.
That already exists. That's the fact.
Is this at the federal level? Is there anything to be had at the state level?
DPC is a pass-through for FED, right?
Well, they're pass-throughs for FET, but all I'm thinking is like, like the Shadow Mountain lot up in our area, is there a new engine and what's going to happen with the old engine?
Okay.
But I mean, Brad, I don't know this, but is there a certain point where a fire truck just becomes decertified due to age and wear and tear?
There's not like an official certification, but yeah, certainly each agency kind of has a standard. But as we look at, some of those guys on the Eastern Plains and some of the more guys on the Western Slope, they can use all the help they can get.
So is this?
Mine stepped out of the room, otherwise I'd ask him. My guess is
let's
they'll go
just-
through a normal state process, but I wonder if.
Great. When he comes back in,
Yeah.
we'll come back to this one.
No, let's just sign DFPC up for it and move on.
Great. We made some really good decisions.
So, and we can call it set, right, auto access properties.
Okay, invest in research and mitigation of firefighter physical, mental, psychological, and emotional health risks.
I just think it's outside the purview, not as
Yeah,
important, it's
agreed.
just outside our.
Mountain Pine Beetle Task Force.
Yeah, that's a long-term industry issue.
Develop a technological common operating environment across mitigation, prescribed fire response, and recovery. Technological.
That's not a technological issue. That is to me, that's an authorities issue, right? Like, Mike, if you have a fire in Douglas County and, you lose a lot of homes, through Crisis Track or the Survivor Portal, we ask for a lot of stuff, but you get into information sharing, challenges, all kinds of things like that. But, technically, we could do it easily.
There's kind of just a lot of different players involved with that. I agree, it's not a technical problem, it's a authority and a collaboration problem.
And if we're bringing it back to Mountain Pine Beetle and these clear objectives that we talked about earlier this morning, we are talking about prescribed fire response, recovery, and mitigation, but not necessarily within the guise of technological common operating, so we're probably X this one as its own thing.
Unless Director Morgan wants it.
Which one's that?
Develop a technological common operating environment across mitigation, prescribed fire response, and recovery.
No, I think that's a work in progress by others. So.
By others, great. What about this one? So make surplus equipment available to volunteer response organizations. What does that
You
look
have
like?
the FET program, we were just kind of asking what happens with like a DFPC engine when you guys are done with it. Is it usable by somebody or is it done?
I guess we don't have much of that capacity, right? But I think there's validity in expanding the ability for us to manage the FET program to increase resources to local agencies. I think there's some validity to that. I think it's more of a medium term than an immediate or short.
Is it FEP, is that what?
FEPP, Federal Excess Property Program, which we've got like 112 engines that are in that program. But we could get, I mean, you want a tank? We could probably get you a tank. We don't have the resources to manage it, but.
That would help during these troubles.
I thought that was a different day, Graham.
Press conference right after, right?
Oh, that was a bulldozer.
Yeah.
Mike is a retired tanker. You just made me feel all warm and fuzzy.
While you're out of the room, we created the SEP program.
The SEP?
Colorado Access Program.
All right, use data and analytics to inform WUI codes, ignition resistance construction, and defensible space. Use data.
Complete.
Happening.
Yeah,
Complete.
yeah. I don't think that's this group.
Certainly not short term.
Yeah.
So not this group, but it is ongoing. Is it worth like just saying this was a federal recommendation, it's happening here in Colorado in this way? Or should we not even bring it up because it's not within our purview?
I would say keep it on the radar because a ton of it was what are we investing in Underwriter Laboratories, Fire Safety Research Institute, trying to blank on the name of it. Up in Missoula, the forestry research. Are we really funding research in a way, especially around the built environment, that it needs to be? And the answer is no, it's getting better, but Colorado's not gonna solve that. But we have a good partnership with IBHS, so that's.
That is good, that is good.
So.
Okay. Expand research and monitoring of post-fire, I'm getting lost in all the words, ecological recovery and compounding disturbances. More on the research.
Yeah, Ray, this could be one we pass to the science and research team as well.
Create a fire science and technology board to coordinate priorities and operationalize research.
I think this is federal. My boss has a bill on it.
And
So I
I
think
would say
that's fine.
Colorado has that with the COE, right? Isn't
It
that,
doesn't have a board necessarily,
Yeah,
but we
right.
have activity going.
but the intent behind that group seems to match, right?
What does the group stand for?
COE, Center of Excellence, DFDC, Center of Excellence.
So we can say, while we don't recommend creating an actual board, we have basically this group in Colorado doing this work in progress.
Yeah, it's having that function.
Yeah.
Y'all, we're making it through.
We're getting it,
All right,
federal.
Federal, yeah.
great. Didn't even have to read that one.
As soon as you see all of us.
I would have get the first punt out.
Okay.
I think the next two are mostly federal too,
these-
related to the fire funding fix,
Yeah.
unless folks disagree. But I think they're both the
I would
funding,
ask,
fire funding fix.
I would ask Director Morgan, I know that here in the state, we're often budgeted for fire suppression at a certain level at the state, and then the governor often has to do additional allocations. Is this someplace we should advocate for better funding in order to do some of the severity things and things like
I
that?
think there's some validity to continuing that conversation. I mean, that's where we got the enhanced state assistance, that's where which is where the little bit of money we have to pre-position resources. I mean, it was kind of a, trust us, this is a good idea.
Yeah.
It's proven to be a good idea, but I think we need to revisit to maybe look at, I think that this Indian Creek fire up in, that's another example of like, it's not that big, but it clearly exceeds county capability, but is it really EFF?
Right.
And the conversation was, well, if a county doesn't have hand crews and helicopters, it's exceeded their capability. So I think there's some conversations that can happen at that level.
So there could be like a Colorado specific similar recommendation and
Yeah.
discussion.
Would you include EFF in that conversation?
Well, of course, the conversation is to convert EFF to ESA, because, and then have a law, which Rankin was behind. I mean, they put $100 million in DEF, disaster emergency funds, because they knew fires were gonna happen, and the conversion to being more aggressive up front to keep them from being state responsibility. But there's some continued conversations on that.
But currently not all counties, still a minority of counties are contributing,
Right.
so.
Okay, so this is
EFF, ESA, I think there's some more room for conversations there.
come back to it. All right.
I don't know, in the Mountain Pine Beetle context, that that's something to solve quick, but. I don't know, I think having additional funding for response ironed out makes some sense.
Let's write that. What'd you say? Ironed out?
Yeah.
That's what you said. Great. Okay, ensure balanced, robust funding for pre-fire mitigation and post-fire restoration.
That was definitely directed more at the feds, but at the same time, I think it gets into that. I think there's things that can happen at the state level to make that better. Mark, would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think it even ties back maybe to Brad's comment a minute ago. I mean, maybe that's a conversation for how DEF dollars are used after a wildfire. Maybe it would be helpful to include that post-fire restoration / pre, flood mitigation and the burn scar as part of those emergency funds.
Well, we're allocating more than ever on mitigation, but I don't know what it is this year, 11, 15 million, somewhere in there, still a little bit of a pittance compared to the problem.
Right.
Yeah, and then when you think about the post-fire flooding problem, I mean, that's potentially as, if not more, destructive, depending on the topography. And it really kind of comes out of nowhere. Like, you don't really have a chance to plan that out years in advance.
And it's come quickly on the heels of the fire this year.
Yeah, this year didn't waste any time. But Cameron Peak killed 6 people over two years. But
All right, folks, we have about 10 minutes left till noon, but we also only have like 11 of these left. Do folks have a hard stop at noon, or do we want to push through this first review of these last set?
I've got a hard stop in about 2 minutes.
Others?
And y'all will be glad to get rid of it. That's fine.
No, that just, thanks for agreeing to do everything we asked you throughout the day.
Well, let's just
Yeah.
get as far as
Keep
we
pushing,
can
pushing,
until
pushing.
folks got
Yeah.
Hey, good luck with Kevin Klein on that one.
Okay, fund partnerships for cross-jurisdictional mitigation. Is this what we just talked about?
I feel like we talked about this.
Yeah, it's more of the same
Yeah.
stuff for federal.
Do you guys know lumpers and splitters? This is like, yeah, we use it a lot too in like science, if we're talking about like how we speciate, and I'm a lumper,
I'm a lumper.
so this is driving me nuts. Because I'm like, why are these all split up? So discussed earlier, but does anybody remember like discussed as in, we've gotta focus on it, it's already happening, not within our purview, like,
It's more of that federal funding component of when a fire is over, again, it's a lot on recovery, that only certain funds will pay for only certain things. And it was more of, it's the same fire, why isn't it more, why is it so difficult?
but not really something
But
we.
it's also that in the report, nobody cross-referenced the different chapters to reduce duplication.
Ah. We see that. Okay. Substantially increased funding for wildfire mitigation and management. Again, feels like we've said yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just a yes.
I think we'll probably, maybe our recommendations out, our broad recommendations, and we got 2 or 3 of the
Yes,
federal recommendations under there.
great, because we also have increased funding for post-fire recovery programs.
Yeah.
And we've talked about as a yes. Increased funding for wildlife research, science, and community preparedness.
Not wildlife.
Here, I'll just, a wildfire.
Hey, I made that mistake
I know.
myself before.
I mostly do wildlife issues, so now that I have here, and then I work with like Ember Alliance and a few other groups, and I'm doing wildfire, I'm constantly putting in wildlife. Okay, encourage dedicated state and local wildfire revenue streams.
I think that falls in line with the general funding we've talked about.
Would we say this is happening, not happening?
And being tackled by the fire commission, isn't it? One of the, it was.
It was,
Yeah.
but it's not,
Has it gone anywhere?
it has not really gone anywhere. I mean, I think, unfortunately, I think it's one of these days in the near future, we're gonna hit rock bottom, we're gonna have a catastrophic fire, and we're gonna go, no, we should probably get together and solve this.
That's how it goes.
When did that commission start working on it, just out of curiosity?
A couple of years ago, I mean, there's fire commission push, state chiefs have been pushing on this, dedicated funding. The problem is Colorado's in a place right now where there's just no extra money to be had.
That's true.
Yeah.
And so until we say, this is it, it's gotta happen.
Well, I feel like we're at a crossroads that something's gotta happen.
Yeah,
Because when we saw all the property value increases
Right.
after COVID, and then the General Assembly was like, wait a minute, property taxes are gonna go too high, so we're gonna change property taxes on a statewide basis. And that has literally just crushed fire departments. And
Oh, yeah.
now we've got a worsening fire problem and a declining revenue stream for, yeah. Yeah, watch it. Give me a Twix,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's important, and I think it gets wrapped into some of the other funding we've talked about. Yeah, at state level, when you talk suppression, right, PFPC's got a little bit of a budget, but then we handle everything else on an emergency basis. And we're just living in a world where we gotta plan on fire, not wait for the
Yes.
emergency, you know?
Yeah, I think if you look overall at fire in Colorado, everything is a 75 to 100-year-old model on how we do things. And even, for some of our federal partners, so we keep having these conversations about is our staffing at the same level it was last year? And the answer is, well, for firefighters it is. But is our staffing, has it changed from what it was in 1990 to what the fire threat is today? The answer is no. So we can bicker back and forth about what today's staffing levels are, but versus last year, but shouldn't we be talking about the threat versus staffing? That's a whole different conversation.
And the fact that more helicopters should be on auto launch.
Yeah, exactly.
Really, you wanna address the real problem? Let's get more aggressive.
Right.
Yeah,
Staff to meet the need, not comparative to last year's
Right,
budget.
yeah. Excellent, okay, so this is part one.
We're
And
echoing to each other.
Right.
And staffing isn't just about the numbers either, right? It's qualifications.
Yeah.
Experience in the job.
Active
Yeah.
workforce,
You know,
yeah.
our federal side, a lot of those guys are retired and they're getting replaced by folks who have as much experience.
Right.
And there's an emerging industry that says, get the people out, let the robots do it.
Robots.
I can't imagine robots doing what I've done on fires.
I imagine them just like out there, rolling
I've
around.
tried some pretty weird stuff. Let's see how a robot goes.
Okay, use the national cohesive strategy as an overarching wildfire framework. This is happening, correct?
I think it's happening,
Yeah.
but as we look at funding and stuff, it doesn't
Yeah,
always come together.
Yeah.
it's an.
I think we talk about that,
Right.
but I don't think we practice it. I mean, I think if we, talk about resilient communities, we talk about that, but as soon as we start talking about minimum codes and standards and wildland urban interface, people vaporware.
That's right.
Like,
So this might be like a big recommendation, like Colorado actually should adopt this.
we're doing it, we're just not very popular for doing it. True, it's very true.
Well, if you wanna change public attitudes, that's my main game, so we can talk about that.
We need your help.
Owner rights versus fire codes.
Yeah. The,
Yeah.
the thing with the couch.
I get ranchers who are excited to tell me they have wolves on their property. They may not say it to their friends, but they'll say it to me, like, this is my whole thing,
Okay.
even if they're not ready to say it.
I
to
haven't heard
everyone else.
that.
They wouldn't tell you, but they would tell me.
You're not talking to my dad.
I've actually had ranchers be really mad that their neighbors killed their wolves because me and my wolves got it figured out. We had a relationship, a system, and these neighbors came and killed my wolves, and now I've got random depredators just coming in here messing up my life. Of course, they would never say that to their neighbors or their stockbroker associations. Okay, develop wildfire science data technology legislation collaboratively across policy jurisdictions. Feels like outside of this
That's more
task
that
force,
federal-
federal.
We talked about that in that bigger picture federal research,
Yeah.
the science data.
It's got legislation in it.
Yeah.
Do we wanna make a legislative recommendation about this?
I think it goes back to something maybe we recommend to Abby
Yeah,
and Julie for.
Yeah.
Because it's a federal solution, not.
We get this policy jurisdiction time and time again. That is like, how many times we talked about that today?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And we have to simplify that somehow.
Fire doesn't recognize boundaries, but people do.
Yeah.
Well, good work on the ground, related to like, be it fire or other things.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter, the boundaries shouldn't matter.
So something that continues to be part of the conversation, but might not be within the wheelhouse of us to change as part of this task
I
force.
mean, we've got some tools out there, but those tools have restrictions.
Okay, strengthen collaboration and support for non-federal wildfire partners.
So a lot of that was around using like groups like Amber Alliance, TNC,
Yeah.
you know, how do you use that workforce when, and this gets into the training and qualifications workforce thing. So I would lump that, I would put that into that workforce capacity conversation.
And things, I mean, I think that also targets or potentially refers to things like the CWDG grant, right? And that sunsetting, right? Certainly, I think there's room for support of that and continuing,
Right.
kind of targeted at that non-federal partner, whether that's workforce capacity, fuels treatments, risk reduction, all of it.
I'll tie back into the last thing I just said related to working cross jurisdictional. We couldn't work with like TNC, like on a G&A, for example.
Yeah.
So there's like, there's a restriction there
Right.
under the mandates we've got, under legal authorities. We work with county, state, tribes, G&A. So not an NGO of any kind.
Right.
Right.
Well, and I'm gonna take it a step further, and, you know, I think there's decent collaboration while the fire's active, but, you know, when we talk mitigation and recovery, we're back to all the jurisdictional authorities and boundaries and stuff.
Yeah. But I think that's a good recommendation for this group, right? That we should, I mean, at the end of the day, we should recognize that this is a border-to-border problem.
Yep.
And we should approach it that way, and then we can hand that off to Abby and Julie and say, continue to do what you can at the federal level, but let's try to really push at the state level from doing that. And become the model, right?
Well, and as I think of this too, in today's world, I've heard from more and more of our local government fire departments that we're not getting, the number of federal firefighters, engines, things like that are decreasing, and we're now doing more work on federal ground, right, for initial attack and even just, abandoned campfire kind of work. Is there anything we can do to strengthen the partnership with federal partners to, help offset the cost of doing that? I mean, I think that dollars. Is that something we want to build into this, or?
Well, I mean, at least, not to get too far out, that to me gets back to that standards and cover conversation. If you send your closest available resource, and it just so happens to be a local fire department going out on federal lands, those agreements should be in place up front to make that happen. Which, like, I mean, even going back to, before we wouldn't send a helicopter until it got so big that it qualified for the state to pay for the helicopter. Well, if we sent it 2 hours ago, it wouldn't burn for the next 90 days.
That's it.
Right.
We could have put it out for $10,000 instead of $10 million. So.
Do you want to mark this as like come back and keep talking about it? And there could be like a recommendation or something here.
Do you guys get involved with pill funds, pill distributions, or no?
Well, the county has built funds.
They don't, well, yeah, they don't disperse to you guys? Oh, we do.
Well, I'm gonna move here.
Come on over.
Now you're just showing off.
Well, to that point, we have that program because our local districts respond into the force for all kinds of things. And so we take that federal pass-through and distribute it to them.
Well,
To keep encouraging them to keep responding.
and that's often been the answer for my federal partners. Well, don't you get bill money? No, you guys get that all at the county. I don't know where they spend it, but they're very clear it's their money.
No, don't mean to light a fuse there.
Well, I think that's the case, across much of the rest of the world too.
Is that right?
Basic counties make some progress. We've been, state chiefs, CCI and CCAB had a couple of conversations, but they were pretty freaked out about their revenue currently.
I understand. We're almost
Hey
done.
all, I'm sorry to interrupt. I have to hop off. And Ray, I just wanted to comment on the next one, line 50, number 147. But I have to go to another meeting. Is that okay if we keep moving on?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Ray, will you introduce it and I'll comment?
Yes. Replace acreage output metrics with outcome-based measures of resilience, risk reduction, and community benefit.
I just wanted to share that Denver Water, and we know we have Madeline McDonald on the task force. Denver Water has been working on this a bit, on other ways to explain outcomes and measure outcomes like that. And so I just think they're not the only ones, of course, and don't have it solved for the entire state. But I think it's going to be really important from a task force perspective to be able to explain the benefits of the work we do, whether it's community work, wildfire mitigation work, fire risk mitigation work, all of that stuff. So I think this is of a really high priority.
Great.
100% agree, and that was my soapbox earlier, is don't
Yeah.
measure success by dollars spent. I had somebody tell me they would have had a really successful first marriage if they would have recognized they could judge how much their ex-wife spent based on.
Yeah. Awesome, so very high priority, and when thinking about this being a priority is, one pathway maybe like this group's creates various metrics and measures, or just recommending here are things that should be taken in consideration when measuring success or outputs. What are some thoughts there? And of course we can dig into it more later. Some initial thoughts though.
I mean, I guess in my mind, it's again a balanced approach to what does success look like, because, you know, I mean, the joke was always, you know, you could burn 100,000 acres in Moffett County and nobody'd ever even see the smoke, but you could report that you burned 100,000 acres.
Yes.
And so that was success, and it's like, well, was it?
I get it, yeah.
So I think, and the co-swap group spent a lot of time early on talking about trying to come up with better performance metrics for measurement, but I think there's still some more work to be done there. What does that really mean?
You know, there was some discussion earlier on the spreadsheet on, you know, data-driven decisions and the amount of analysis and stuff that's gone on. I think, you know, one of the things we've been trying to do locally is, hey, did we change the color on the map by doing this work? Right? Did we decrease it, you know, from high risk to moderate risk or something like that? And yet it's not a metric you can kind of put your hands on, but you know you can't change topography, but you can change fuel, you can change
Absolutely.
the siding of the house or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Excellent, so I'll mark this as very high priority and a key topic of conversation.
I think this also goes with other groups as well related to it. We're talking about success and outcomes. I think this is going to get into the forest health and watershed components as well with some of those more I don't know if they're more subjective metrics or what, but this is something we also struggle with in the feds too. Sometimes it's like, man, if you go out and do large treatments, like those numbers look great, but what do they really mean?
Absolutely. Different kinds of like outputs to measure, Excellent, so we can.
I've been hearing from the Fed partners the random acts of mitigation for the work we do, but then I'm like, well, what's the 6 acre parcel 6 miles into the forest?
I prefer some stuff as random acts of restoration. I'm just saying, it's like, sometimes it's so patchwork, it's just like, we did this thing here, why? Not that it's a bad project either.
Because we could.
Yeah.
A lot of times because you could.
Excellent. So close. Okay, conduct recurring holistic quantitative review of wildfire mitigation and management system. I mean, this seems really related, right? We need metrics to conduct a quantitative
It's just,
review.
it's related, tied in with the one above.
Yeah.
Splitters.
There's no one online now.
Okay,
Oh, they all bailed.
bye.
Oh, I don't have to wear headphones anymore.
They don't have the stick-to-itiveness, this group. So I'm gonna also, but I put a note this is really part of the above. And that by creating metrics and measures, you're then able to evaluate quantitatively. Otherwise, what quantitative measures are you measuring? Okay, require all hazard disclosures for real estate transactions. I heard a threat.
I am not touching that one. That's way out of our purview.
Yes, that's,
We're not, forget the pun, that's not the same
if
sport.
you're gonna find yourself hanging from a tree.
Yeah.
Okay,
Been around long enough, they don't have to touch that one.
great. Okay, encourage and reward innovation in the fields of affordable building material design, subdivisions, landscapes, safe and sustainable building, ignition resistant, so built environment stuff.
I go to IBHS, right? That work is being done,
Mhm.
and Colorado's at the table.
Yeah,
It's being done, there's good progress, but in context of Mount Pine Beetle, we're
Yeah,
not really gonna move the needle here in the next 5 years.
the point is well taken. But it's important, it's just not directly related to this.
Right.
which, and some of you remember, we were able to kind of stand up the framework for a home hardening grant program, which was kind of the concept of if you have an existing structure and you're on a fixed income and you're replacing your roof from 30 years ago,
Yeah.
but it's gonna cost you $2,000 more to do a fire resistant roof, here's a grant program
Yeah,
that you could do, and then JBC not only didn't fund it, but we're like, hey, there's a few dollars left, you're broke,
yeah.
you can take the money, and they deleted the entire program off the books.
Wow.
I'm like,
We just thought you'd sweep the account.
you just take the money. Because if we ever get this bids,
Yeah, yeah,
there's the program to do it, anyway.
yeah.
But, again, I think it warrants some conversation about what we do.
What's happening? My computer thing.
And again, I'll say, that we do things with co-swap and furworm to tell people, here's some money to do fuels treatments on your property. So it's not that out of the concept to say, here's some money to help you replace your roof with something that's more resilient.
And luckily, we have a cost share program, same kind of thing, like, we'll help you pay if you're willing to follow these standards,
Yeah,
right?
you gotta have a dog in this
Yeah,
fight.
right.
And again, at least the way we structured it was, you needed to be somebody that there was a financial need.
Yeah.
It's not just like,
Yeah.
well, I'd really like to have a metal roof, so.
Yeah, right.
Reducing liability for prescribed fire impacts despite best practices. Does this feel like a recommendation?
I think we've already done this,
Great.
right? I mean, there's an insurance backstop, but I think it's more of the conversation. That's where the conversation has kind of stopped, but we're already resurfacing about realistic workforce and investments. The state of Colorado invests money for the most part to put fires out.
That's right.
We don't even have money if we wanted to partner with DOI or US Forest Service, we said, this is a fire we wanna do for resource benefit, so let's manage it. We really don't have money to do that, which is like,
That's very unfortunate.
yeah. So, again, that's the bigger picture conversation about
And it's
how we approach it. Everybody knows we need to manage fire, but we don't get money to do that, we don't have the latitude to make that decision. We do, we're just creative with it.
Y'all,
Your decision.
the last one I'm gonna read out loud. Increase funding and technical assistance to state, local, tribe, public health agencies, water providers, increase local wildfire resilience capacity. Again, funding, technical assistance, workforce. I think it's all part of the bigger conversations we're having around increasing resilience capacity, right? So it's already what we're talking about, or is this something separate? Ellie, do you know what that black box, is that you?
This is the chat.
Oh, great. I thought it was on my screen, but it's
No, I'm
not.
copying everything now.
Is this part of some of the other things we're already discussing?
Kind of feel like it is part of what, it kind of sums up everything we've been talking about.
Great.
It's one of those overarching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
I'm full of lumbers, I love it.
These denim splitters in the world.
What are we doing this for?
Yes, I think Alan and myself, we were like looking at these, I think we got to like basically big four categories.
Right?
Yeah.
Funding,
Yeah.
capacity, resources, and so on.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think, well,
so
was up there. Anyway, sorry.
what do we think a good next step from here is?
Well, seems like we ought to consolidate all of this information and get our buckets lumped.
Great.
Yeah, I think, as I go through your guys' worksheet, we answered a lot of the questions in here as far as what already exists, things like that. A little bit about the gap. We may need to come back and refine what action is needed. I mean, I think we identified a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
And then we'll probably need to prioritize near-term actions.
I agree 100%. We worked through that phase, now it's what do we take forward as recommended actions? That's what everyone wants, but.
Excellent.
We identified a lot of longer-term actions.
Yeah.
I thought next step was 500-page paper.
Yes, exactly.
Please no.
So what I'll go ahead and do, I'll take the transcription, my random notes and colors, which got out of control. And I'll probably make basically a new tab in the spreadsheet that just includes the ones that we've decided to move forward.
Yeah.
Clean up these notes, and I'll probably start a document where the clean notes are with the associated recommendation. Maybe I'll try playing around with like lumping a little bit. And then I think this will have like another pass of actually talking more deeply about what's already come up for the ones that will move forward before task E can fully be checked off. But it feels like the hardest part has been done, which is just getting from 140 to what actually matters.
You bet.
Awesome.
You bet.
Well, great job.
Good work, everyone.
We did it.
I'm gonna end the recording.
Thank you, yes.
I got a scoop, but I think that was good. I appreciate